Chapter 1476, Massacre began. Chapter 1476, Massacre began. One stroke. He caused me severe injury with just one stroke? How could he be that powerful? Real god Huiyuan was still dumbfounded. One should know that he was a real god. Although he was the weakest kind of real god and his divine power was restrained, he was at the peak of the third level in Sky Sword Prison. Under the circumstances of them fighting head-on, the sword principle that Jian Wushuang had performed broke his stick and heavily injured him simultaneously. What kind of power was that? Even out of the real gods who were at the peak of the second level, there was barely anyone who had such power. Run, hurry up and run. Real god Huiyuan was in panic mode. He had entirely lost his courage to fight against Jian Wushuang. After all, his defensive power was ordinary. Jian Wushuang had caused him severe injury with one stroke. If he were to perform another few strokes, he would definitely be dead. Jian Wushuang smirked at the sight of real god Huiyuan running away. Then, the divine power in his body started churning within. The secret of dragon blood. The secret skill could be used for making an escape, it could also be used to hunt someone down. Even though it was only the first layer of the secret skill of dragon blood, it had increased Jian Wushuang's speed tenfold and the expense of divine power was within Jian Wushuang's endurance. In combination with the secret skill of flowing light phantom, Jian Wushuang caught up to real god Huiyuan in a short time. Then he instantly performed the sword principle. No! Real god Huiyuan let out a shrill cry and tried his best to withstand the attack. However, in a short while, a terrifying power made real god Huiyuan's divine body quiver madly. In the end it collapsed. Then Jian Wushuang buried real god Huiyuan's life nuclei in oblivion. Real god Huiyuan, who had been imprisoned in Sky Sword Prison for a total of 8 million years, died. In the void, Jian Wushuang stood there, looking at real god Huiyuan's cold body, and he felt extremely emotional. Real god, he is a real god. I killed a real god. There was an unprecedented light in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Humph. However, he was only a real god of the bottom rank. So what if you killed him? There's nothing to be excited about. Plus, this real god is in Sky Sword Prison where his divine power was restrained. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to kill him, King of Venomous Worm's voice was heard in his head. Of course, even when we're out of Sky Sword Prison, a real god with ordinary divine power and unique skill like real god Huiyuan, and never once comprehended the power of Heaven Wei, you could be evenly matched with them with your current power. Jian Wushuang smiled. In Sky Sword Prison, the divine power of a real god was restrained. It did cut down the real god's power drastically. However, even if real god Huiyuan could have erupted perfectly, he could really be matched evenly with his current power. I killed real god Huiyuan. Blood Emperor should be the first to receive the news. I wonder what his response will be, Jian Wushuang muttered. However, regardless of his response, I will not be afraid of him. Plus, real god Huiyuan is just the beginning. Then, let's begin the massacre. With boundless rage, Jian Wushuang continued to start hunting for his prey in Darkness Mountain. In the middle of Darkness Mountain, in the Crimson Castle. The elderly with blade-like eyebrows and a crimson long robe, Blood Emperor, sat on his throne in the utmost position of the hall. Before him, a lady in green stood politely. Jian Wushuang, he came to my Darkness Mountain again? He has guts. Blood Emperor looked cold. Could it be because he thought I wouldn't dare to kill him with Fiery King backing him up? Blood Emperor sneered at the thought. Although Fiery King was strong and he wasn't his match, he only maintained a respectful distance but was not afraid or fearful of him. After all, Fiery King couldn't kill him. But Jian Wushuang had blood-killing plate armor on him. It would help him to increase his power tremendously. Plus, it was his only hope to leave Sky Sword Prison. As Jian Wushuang is so arrogant, that'd be great. I am worried that I will have no opportunity to kill him. Blood Emperor smirked coldly and lifted his head. Go, immediately send Huiyuan a message. Let him figure out a way to drag Jian Wushuang over. Even if he can't delay him, watch him for me. I am coming after him personally. Yes, the lady in green nodded and immediately sent real god Huiyuan a message. After a while, the lady in green creased her eyebrows. Why? Blood Emperor asked. I have no idea what happened, but real god Huiyuan didn't reply, the lady in green said. No reply? Could he be fighting against Jian Wushuang? Continue to send him messages, Blood Emperor ordered. The lady in green continued to send messages. 2 hours later, the lady in green stopped messaging. The atmosphere in the hall grew creepy. It has been 2 hours. Even if he was fighting Jian Wushuang, they wouldn't be in a fight for so long and didn't even reply to any messages. However, he really didn't reply at all. There's only one possibility, which is that real god Huiyuan has already died. Blood Emperor squinted his eyes. If he was dead, he naturally wouldn't reply. That was the only explanation. Huiyuan died. Could it be Fiery King? Blood Emperor creased his eyebrows and then he shook his head very quickly. No way. Fiery King is widely recognized as the top expert in Sky Sword Prison. He is reliant on his own identity. Huiyuan never once provoked him on his own. It's unlikely that he would lower himself to take action against Huiyuan. There isn't any possibility that he would help Jian Wushuang kill Huiyuan either. In other words, the one who killed Huiyuan could only be Jian Wushuang. A universe god killed a real god. Blood Emperor's face grew extremely grave. In Sky Sword Prison, in a situation where divine power was capped, there was a possibility for a universe god to kill a real god. For example, the two monstrous universe gods on the second level in Sky Sword Prison had the achievement of killing a real god. Hence, Blood Emperor wasn't surprised that Jian Wushuang had reached such a stage. He was shocked at Jian Wushuang's improvement speed. When he first came to Sky Sword Prison, he was only at the 3rd level and not even on the peak of the 3rd level. But it has yet to reach 5,000 years' time. He has already reached the ability of the two monstrous universe gods and killed a real god. Such a terrifying speed of improvement. No wonder this boy dares to return to Darkness Mountain. It turns out that he is extremely confident about his own power. However, it is because of his confidence that I have an opportunity to kill him and take blood-killing plate armor. Blood Emperor clenched his fist and looked at the lady in green. Send a message to the experts under my command to keep an eye out for Jian Wushuang within Darkness Mountain from today onwards and report to me immediately when they see Jian Wushuang. This time, I will not give him any chance to run away. Blood Emperor was raging in anger. Chapter 1477 Insane Massacre. Chapter 1477 Insane Massacre. Jian Wushuang had killed real god Huiyuan. Although this matter had shocked the Blood Emperor, he was not too concerned about it. It was merely a real god at the lowest level. Since he was killed, so be it. However, a mere 10 days had passed since the incident with real god Huiyuan. Similarly, real god Qilin, who was under the command of the Blood Emperor, had sent a message to the Blood Emperor saying that he had met Jian Wushuang. Both of them were engaged in an intense fight and he wanted the Blood Emperor to rush over quickly. The Blood Emperor was delighted when he received the news. However, on his way to real god Qilin's location, he realized that there were no longer replies to the messages that he had sent. When he arrived at the scene, Jian Wushuang and real god Qilin had disappeared long ago and only the battlefield, which was in shambles, was left behind. In no time, the Blood Emperor confirmed that real god Qilin had also fallen. 1 month later, another incident occurred within the Darkness Mountain. Jian Wushuang came across a third real god known as real god Huanyu. This real god was different from real god Huiyuan and real god Qilin whom he had killed. This was because real god Huanyu was someone who had learnt a small bit of the power of Heaven Wei and he belonged to real gods at the 2nd level. When comparing abilities, he was a lot stronger than real god Huiyuan and real god Qilin. However, the results were 2 rays of flittering light were shuttling back and forth in the void quickly. Real god Huanyu, it is impossible for you to escape. Jian Wushuang was filled with a murderous aura. He had already used the secret skill of dragon blood and unleashed the blazing quicksand region toward real god Huanyu crazily. Although real god Huanyu had used all his tricks, he was still unable to escape Jian Wushuang in the end. In the skies of a giant flatland, there were still remnants of huge amounts of divine power around the void. As for Jian Wushuang, he was looking down at real god Huanyu's body with a cold expression. Real god Huanyu. Among the many real gods in Sky Sword Prison, he was considered a real god who kept an extremely low profile and his ability to stay alive was decent. Under normal conditions, as long as it was not something that was at the level of the 4 kings that took action personally, no one else could kill you. However, it is a pity that the person you came across is me. Jian Wushuang murmured. Comparing abilities, although the Jian Wushuang of that moment still could not be compared to the 4 kings, he was not too far away from them. Moreover, his ability to chase after opponents was extremely great. By using the first stage of the secret skill of Dragon Blood and combining it with the secret skill Flowing Light Phantom, even real god Huanyu, who was an expert in speed, would be unable to escape from him. This allowed Jian Wushuang to possess the absolute means to kill a normal real god, and even those who had comprehended a small bit of the power of Heaven Wei and possessed the power of real gods in the second stage in the Sky Sword Prison. Furthermore, he was different from the four kings. The criterion for the four kings to leave the Sky Sword Prison was too demanding and there was almost no hope. Hence, the four kings had lost hope a long time ago. As such, even though they had very strong abilities, they did not massacre the real gods. Instead, they occupied a small area as their territory willingly and became one of the kings by allowing the real gods to depend on them. After many years, the reigning four kings had come to a mutual understanding and they would not take action against the real gods easily. Take the fiery king for an example. Even though he itched for a fight, he would only fight with the other three kings. But how about Jian Wushuang? His power at the moment was very close or even equal to the four kings. However, he was only a universe god. Hence, his criterion to leave the Sky Sword Prison was to kill 10 real gods. As such, Jian Wushuang would obviously not hesitate and take action directly. Apart from that, there was still revenge to be had against the Blood Emperor. Hence, within the Darkness Mountain, the real god experts under the command of the Blood Emperor would naturally be the first to be affected by becoming the targets of Jian Wushuang's massacre. Within the Darkness Mountain, Jian Wushuang was continuing his massacre. As for the Blood Emperor, when he received news that even real god Huanyu had died at the hands of Jian Wushuang, he was no longer able to remain calm. It should be known that real god Huanyu was a real god who had comprehended a small portion of the power of Heaven Wei and he belonged to real gods of the second level in the Sky Sword Prison. Even if the Blood Emperor wanted to kill him, he would need to use quite a bit of effort. However, Jian Wushuang was actually able to kill him. The Blood Emperor understood at once that Jian Wushuang's power at the moment had achieved a shocking stage already. In the whole Darkness Mountain apart from him, no one else could compete with Jian Wushuang. After understanding this point, the Blood Emperor immediately sent a message to the experts in the Darkness Mountain who were under his command. Listen up. All of you who are in the Darkness Mountain, it doesn't matter whether you are a universe god, real god or even a real god in the second stage. All of you are to find a place to hide and lay low. In addition, hide your presence. With this, that Jian Wushuang should not be able to find you. However, if he does find you, no matter who you are, run away immediately. At the same time, send a message to me and I will rush over straight away. Remember, do not leave it to chance. Although that Jian Wushuang is a universe god, he is extremely powerful. Real god Huiyuan and real god Qilin have already died by his hand. Now even real god Huanyu has fallen. If all of you do not start to be careful, the next one to die will be you. The Blood Emperor's message was sent out. At once, many experts in the whole Darkness Mountain were in shock. Jian Wushuang was a universe god. Moreover, it had not been over 5,000 years since he came to the Sky Sword Prison. When he first came to the Sky Sword Prison, he was only of the third level. However, at the moment he could even kill real god Huanyu, who was of the second level. A universe god who was able to kill a normal real god of the third level had indeed appeared before in the Sky Sword Prison. However, it was the first time that a universe god who was able to kill a real god of the second level who had comprehended a small portion of the power of Heaven Wei had appeared in the Sky Sword Prison. Everyone was surprised by this news. After that, for the sake of remaining alive, the real gods and universe gods in the Darkness Mountain started to find hiding places and kept themselves hidden immediately. Some of them hid in the forest of the tall mountains while some of them hid deep underground. All of them had hidden their presence completely. Under normal circumstances, if a real god were to conceal their presence intentionally, with the consciousness level of a universe god, it would be extremely difficult for the real gods to be discovered. However, in actual fact, no matter how the experts hid themselves or erased their presence, in front of Jian Wushuang's soul power, they were just wasting their energy. With a sweep of his soul power, any experts within its radius would be unable to escape. Comparing Jian Wushuang and the Heartless King, this was something that was more frightening about Jian Wushuang. He continued to wander around the Darkness Mountain as he was seeking the real gods wantonly. As long as they were discovered, he would attack immediately and the real gods had no chance of escaping from his hands. News poured in continuously. First, it was real god Huiyuan, real god Qilin and then real god Huanyu. What followed after that was real god Tianyu and real god Shueisha. In a mere 3 months, 5 real gods were killed by Jian Wushuang. It was only a mere 3 months. With this terrifying massacre that was started by Jian Wushuang within the Darkness Mountain, the whole Sky Sword prison was in an uproar in no time. Chapter 1478, Fighting Against Blood Emperor Again. Chapter 1478, Fighting Against Blood Emperor Again. In 3 months he had killed 5 real gods. Jian Wushuang's existence already struck fear in all real gods in Sky Sword prison. The real gods in Darkness Mountain who had attached themselves to Blood Emperor were seized by extreme fear. However, just when Jian Wushuang had met the 6th real god in Darkness Mountain and was killing the 6th real god, Blood Emperor had finally arrived. Blood Emperor had been searching for Jian Wushuang personally in Darkness Mountain when he had killed real god Huiyuan back then. It was a pity that Darkness Mountain was rather huge. Jian Wushuang was quick in action and Blood Emperor couldn't get there in time when he was killing the few previous real gods. Until the 6th real god. In the spacious void, the breeze blowing was piercingly cold. However, the air was static. Jian Wushuang, in 3 months, 5 real gods under my command were killed. You are really capable. Blood Emperor's gaze was cold, along with boundless murderous intentions as he glared at Jian Wushuang. Just 5 real gods. Plus, although the 5 real gods were attached to you, there were no substantial benefits to you. Even if I killed them, what effect would it have to you, Blood Emperor? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Blood Emperor's face grew dim. Jian Wushuang made it sound so leisurely. Although there were no substantial effects to the 5 real gods' death, what about his reputation? The 5 real gods were an appendage to him and they were killed by Jian Wushuang directly in his territory. That had led to great disgrace to him. Among the experts in Sky Sword prison, it was probably the topic of conversation then. They were probably all making fun of him. As long as I kill you, everything will settle down. Blood Emperor fixed his gaze at Jian Wushuang. True. It'd die down after you kill me and you'll still be widely recognized as one of the overlords in Sky Sword prison. As for the 5 real gods, there'll definitely be other real gods to go under your command in the future. However, there's only one problem. Jian Wushuang looked at Blood Emperor with a cheeky smile. That is, whether you can kill me. You have a death wish. There was a sharp gleam in Blood Emperor's eyes. Roar. There was a fierce aura soaring up, then his body immediately rose and turned into a 3-meter-tall crimson figure, covered in blood. A terrifying, imposing manner swept out. Wow. There was crimson light that plunged through the void. It was extremely creepy. It was as though the entire universe was drowning in a prison of blood. Blood Emperor. Jian Wushuang glared at the incoming Blood Emperor with his bright, sparkly eyes as he plastered a bloodthirsty smile across his face. Virum. There was an enormous amount of crimson flame which flooded in and formed a vast crimson ocean while Jian Wushuang was the king of the crimson ocean. Simultaneously, an enormous amount of blazing quicksand flowed out. Scarlet Kingdom and blazing quicksand were performed at the same time. Over the course of 3,000 years, Jian Wushuang's Scarlet Kingdom had improved under the Fiery King's guidance. He could already perform the 3rd stage of Scarlet Kingdom then. As he performed the mighty Scarlet Kingdom, Jian Wushuang's power increased by double. He moved and there were 9 shadows that appeared all of a sudden. Then Jian Wushuang immediately wielded his sword. 9th Heaven Stroke. Swoosh. A boundless sword intention soared to the highest heaven. The moment the sword intention exploded, Blood Mountain sword in Jian Wushuang's hand suddenly increased in size. Then a towering sword shadow appeared in the void. The sword shadow carried a boundless sword intention just like a nemesis sword. Along with the operation of Jian Wushuang's divine power, the nemesis sword swung out. 9-shade crimson knife. Blood Emperor let out a low roar too. As his figure moved, a significant horrifying crimson blade light revealed. There were crimson shadows on the crimson blade light, moving just like moving ghosts that were extremely creepy. Suddenly the two collided. Dang. The collision of fierce force made Jian Wushuang's face grow grave. He retreated a few steps. Roar, roar, roar. There were roars reverberating in the universe simultaneously. Then there was a demonic dragon that was formed by 9 strips of soul power plunging in the direction of Blood Emperor along with boundless imposing aura. Go. Blood Emperor waved casually and there was no blade shadow. Only a crimson light glided past. The 9 demonic dragons shattered into pieces altogether. The void before Jian Wushuang suddenly shattered and the 3-meter-tall crimson man that Blood Emperor had taken the shape of suddenly appeared from nowhere. Then there was a crimson claw that clawed at Jian Wushuang's head at lightning speed. In the end, it pierced Jian Wushuang's head, but there was no blood nor brains that flushed out. A shadow? Blood Emperor felt his pupils contract. Jian Wushuang's figure was already next to Blood Emperor. Then Jian Wushuang's body was tense in a bow shape as he gripped Blood Mountain sword tightly. He looked like he was well prepared. 10,000 shadows. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Countless sword lights suddenly erupted. Every sword light was unbelievably fast and the power was terrifying. In that instant there were hundreds of sword lights that were cast. The hundreds of sword lights were aiming at Blood Emperor's throat, heart, skull and the other vital parts. Every sword light's angle was tricky. 10,000 shadows was like ninth heaven stroke. They were created during Jian Wushuang's training in the past 3,000 years. They were real god-unique skills. Jian Wushuang had only created 3 real god-unique skills by then. Besides those 2, there was Crimson Light that he previously created. Due to the limitation of his level, the 3 sword principles were merely beginner real god-unique skills. However, they were entirely different in nature. Ninth Heaven Stroke, also known as Nemesis Sword, carried boundless sword intention. It focused on absolute power. 10,000 Shadows was more suitable for close combat. Hundreds of sword lights launched attacks at one's vital parts at the same time, so it was hard to guard against. Crimson Light was a combination of speed and power. It'd be more suitable if it were to be used for surprise attack. At the moment the countless sword lights erupted, the vigor in Blood Emperor's body churned and formed a huge crimson beast. The crimson beast blocked Blood Emperor. Not only did it block all the sword lights, it also let out an angry bellow and charged towards Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's body flashed creepily and he shook off the crimson beast with ease. Haha, Jian Wushuang, it seems that I have belittled you. In 3,000 years your power has increased to the current stage. It seems that even if it is me, I have to perform some tricks to be able to kill you. Blood Emperor's cold voice reverberated across the universe. Go ahead and perform all sort of tricks. Jian Wushuang's face grew extremely solemn. If so, then you prepare to die. There was a glimpse of murderous intention. Blood-killing demon prison. Virum. A terrifying vigor erupted from Blood Emperor's body and the vigor formed loud clouds of crimson fog that covered the sky. They flowed towards Jian Wushuang at a terrifying speed. This technique. The king of venomous worms in Jian Wushuang's body was surprised. Chapter 1479, Unable to do anything. Chapter 1479, Unable to do anything. This is Holocaust sect's blood-killing demon prison, one of the most terrifying secret skills. Jian Wushuang, you had better be careful. The king of venomous worms warned. Even without the king of venomous worms mentioning it, Jian Wushuang could already tell that this move was not normal. Come. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed brilliantly and a vast amount of soul power burst forth from his body. In no time, a giant golden divine ape appeared out of thin air. The divine power and soul power from his body had combined beautifully. An immense amount of blood mist came forth. The blood mist contained frightening corrosive power and it engulfed Jian Wushuang's golden divine ape with a whooshing sound. The golden divine ape on the body surface of Jian Wushuang gave a fierce roar and even its giant body started to change shape under the corrosive power of the blood mist. Jian Wushuang's expression turned grave. He then manipulated his divine power and an enormous amount of sword essence burst forth at once. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Sounds of the divine power suppressing the corrosive power could be heard continuously and they carried on for 2 breaths' time. The great amount of blood mist finally dissipated completely and within it stood Jian Wushuang. The golden divine ape on his body surface had already disappeared and what had replaced it was a black tortoise. However, this black tortoise had already been corroded to the point that not much of it was left. Jian Wushuang's gaze was like lightning and he stared at the Blood Emperor in front of him. What a horrifying secret skill. Just by blocking this move alone, about 30% of my divine power has been depleted and about half of my soul power has been depleted. If such a secret skill were to be used a few more times, I would be unable to block it. However, it is fortunate that it also takes the Blood Emperor quite a bit of effort to use this move. He could feel that after unleashing this move, the Blood Emperor's aura had depleted considerably as well. At that very moment, the Blood Emperor also looked toward Jian Wushuang. However, his eyes were filled with surprise. He actually blocked it. This little kid actually blocked my blood-killing demon prison? The Blood Emperor was stunned. He knew very well how strong this attack of his was. Even in the Holocaust sect, this secret skill was extremely powerful. However, Jian Wushuang had actually blocked it while facing it head-on. It wasn't until this moment that the Blood Emperor finally understood that Jian Wushuang's abilities were on par with his own. Blood Emperor, that attack just now must have been your strongest attack. Jian Wushuang's icy cold voice could be heard. Since you have already used your strongest attack, you shall take my attack now. As soon as the words left his mouth, a vast amount of soul energy burst forth from Jian Wushuang's body again. The golden divine ape, which had been corroded by the blood mist until nothing was left, appeared again. Moreover, its body seemed to be bigger than before. As for Jian Wushuang, who was shrouded by the golden divine ape, the divine power as well as the 5-star ancient god power in his body erupted from his body and gathered in the index finger of his right hand. As Jian Wushuang's eyes turned narrow, he pointed his index finger, which gathered a vast amount of divine power and glowed brilliantly with a golden light abruptly. Ancient God's fourth finger, God's test. Boom. As soon as he pointed his finger, the heavens and earth shook. The void around the area turned completely dark. Within the endless darkness, a dark, golden-colored giant finger that looked like it had appeared from the ancient times appeared out of thin air. This finger brought along power that could destroy the world just like the God's test which descended from the heaven, and the power headed in the direction of the Blood Emperor. Ancient God's fourth finger. As a 5-star ancient god, this was the strongest attack that Jian Wushuang could manage. Judging by raw power itself, this finger was a lot more powerful than the real god's unique skills that Jian Wushuang had created, and it could be considered his strongest attack at that moment. At that moment, Jian Wushuang unleashed his strongest attack. As he looked at the golden-colored giant finger moving toward him, the Blood Emperor's expression turned grave and an enormous amount of crimson light burst forth again. 9-shade crimson knife. A terrifying, bright crimson knife light appeared and swung in the direction of the dark, golden-colored giant finger. Bam! The finger was struck by the crimson-colored knife light. This caused most of its divine power to be dissipated crazily, and a hole also appeared in the middle of the giant finger. In the end, not much power was left to do anything to the Blood Emperor. Umph! With a groan, the Blood Emperor's face turned pale and he could not help but retreat a step back. However, he regained his posture straight away. As expected of the Blood Emperor, who is one of the 4 kings. Today I, Jian Wushuang, have learnt my lesson and I shall take my leave now. A hearty, loud peal of laughter from Jian Wushuang could be heard. However, Jian Wushuang had already unleashed the secret skill of Dragon Skill and plunged into the void far away. The Blood Emperor stared at Jian Wushuang's back coldly. However, he did not give chase. It was clear that Jian Wushuang's ability to escape was impressive and it would be impossible for him to catch up. Moreover, even if he did catch up, he would be unable to do anything to Jian Wushuang. In just 3,000 years, he became this strong. The Blood Emperor had mixed feelings. However, in no time he began to send a message to the experts in the Darkness Mountain. I have already fought with Jian Wushuang. Currently his abilities are on par with mine. As for all of you, if you do not wish to die, leave the Darkness Mountain quickly and find a place to hide. After finished sending his message, the Blood Emperor swung the sleeves of his robe, turned around and returned to his Crimson Fortress. He had already exhausted all his energy. However, he was still unable to kill Jian Wushuang. With Jian Wushuang's abilities, if he were to go on a killing spree in the Darkness Mountain, no one could stop him. Within the Darkness Mountain, when the experts under the command of the Blood Emperor received his message, all of them were dumbfounded. Even though the Blood Emperor had taken action personally, he was still unable to do anything to Jian Wushuang. The Blood Emperor personally said that Jian Wushuang's abilities were not inferior to his own? How is this possible? Even the Blood Emperor is unable to do anything. Who else is there in Darkness Mountain who can stop Jian Wushuang's massacre? Run, get out of the Darkness Mountain quickly. If we were to remain here as soon as we are discovered by Jian Wushuang, we will definitely die. The experts in the Darkness Mountain made a move one after another. No wished to die. If they were to continue staying in the Darkness Mountain, there was a high possibility of them being discovered and killed by Jian Wushuang. However, if they were to leave Darkness Mountain and hide within the vast lands of the Sky Sword Prison, it would be extremely difficult for Jian Wushuang to find them. In the void, Jian Wushuang plunged toward the front slowly. He soon found a place and stopped so that he could recover his divine power. In the fight with the Blood Emperor, he had unleashed many moves continuously and had depleted a great amount of his divine power. This Blood Emperor is indeed strong, especially that blood-killing demon prison move of his. If not for the blood-killing plate armor protecting my body, I might have been unable to block it completely. However, the fight with him had also proven my judgment. My abilities now are indeed about enough to compete with the four kings, Jian Wushuang chuckled. With the king of venomous worms present, in no time, Jian Wushuang's divine power had recovered to its peak. However, at that moment the fiery king sent a message. Chapter 1480 Jian Wushuang on the first level. Chapter 1480, Jian Wushuang on the first level. Jian Wushuang, I heard that you fought Blood Emperor again? And you were so well matched? Fiery King asked casually. Yeah, we were. But if you were to describe it as well matched, it'd be too forceful. In terms of power, Blood Emperor is stronger than I, Jian Wushuang smiled. The earlier battle looked as though they were well matched, but Jian Wushuang knew clearly that Blood Emperor was one notch above him during the fight. Don't be humble. Blood Emperor admitted himself that your power is not inferior to his, Fiery King said. Jian Wushuang kept quiet. Oh yeah, you're still in Darkness Mountain, right? Fiery King asked again. Jian Wushuang responded. I just received an update. Blood Emperor sent a message to the expert under his command for them to leave Darkness Mountain, Fiery King said. They left. Jian Wushuang was shocked. What else can they do besides leaving? Fiery King scoffed, you're obviously hunting them down. Even real God Huan Yu on the second level died in your hands. The real gods and universe god in Darkness Mountain are naturally afraid of you. Plus, your consciousness probing measure is so impressive. No matter how well they hide themselves in Darkness Mountain, they will be found by you. Under such circumstances, unless one has a death wish, why would they dare to stay back? Jian Wushuang understood then. If these real gods were to leave Darkness Mountain and hide in every corner in Skysword Prison covers a large expanse and even I would find it difficult to find them, Jian Wushuang said. True, Fiery King smiled. However, as they are already hiding from me, forget about them. Anyway, those who found trouble with me 3,000 years ago weren't just Blood Emperor alone, Jian Wushuang said. What do you mean? Would you be considering the experts under the command of Heartless? Fiery King said. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. 3,000 years ago, Heartless King came to assist Blood Emperor in killing me. Then I already killed 5 real gods under Blood Emperor's command. As for Heartless King, how can I just let her simply avoid it? I'll go to her territory to carry out a massacre and take revenge on her. Jian Wushuang, Heartless King is different from Blood Emperor. Her consciousness attack is extremely strong. Are you confident that you can deal with her? Fiery King said. Don't worry. As I dare to visit her territory, I am definitely confident, Jian Wushuang smiled. Consciousness attack. The attack that Jian Wushuang feared the least was a consciousness attack. After all, he lit up his soul power. Even though his soul strength only had the limit of Universe God, his soul endurance power was far more impressive compared to real God. After they ended the communication link, Jian Wushuang immediately departed to where Heartless King's territory was. He arrived at Heartless King's territory and started a massacre again. The time flew past. In Skysword Prison, in between 2 remote mountains, there was an exquisite purple pavilion. In the pavilion, there were 2 figures seated at a long narrow table with wine and delicacies. The 2 figures, a man and a woman, were both young and both universe gods. Universe god Tianfeng and universe god Gu Tong were the other 2 most famous universe gods in Skysword Prison besides Jian Wushuang. On top of that, they were also known as monstrous. There were many prisoners in Skysword Prison. Excluding Jian Wushuang, there were only 28 people on the second level. Among the 28, there were 26 real gods, while the remaining 2 were universe gods who were the 2 before him. At that very moment, universe god Tianfeng and universe god Gu Tong were drinking as they chatted leisurely. Tianfeng, have you heard about what happened in Heartless Land recently? Universe god Gu Tong asked. Such a major incident, it spread all over Skysword Prison so tumultuously. Of course, I know, universe god Tianfeng smiled and continued, speaking of which, Jian Wushuang is pretty amazing. He first visited Blood Emperor's Darkness Mountain and killed 5 real gods. Then he went to Heartless King's heartless land and killed 2 real gods. Among the real gods who were killed, there were some who were on the 2nd level. They died by his hand anyway. Then Universe God Tianfeng was impressed too. He was Universe God himself. Under the circumstances of their divine power being restrained in Sky Sword Prison, he could also kill a real god who was weak as real god Huiyuan. However, if he were to run into real gods on the 2nd level, he could only be evenly matched at most. However, Jian Wushuang could kill real gods on the 2nd level. He was obviously much stronger than him. I heard that Heartless King took action personally. She even performed her strongest master stroke, Life and Death 9th Heaven, but it didn't cause any effect to him, Universe God Gu Tong exclaimed. Life and Death 9th Heaven? Universe God Tianfeng looked shocked. That's a terrifying dreamland. With Heartless King's capability, if she were to perform it with her all, besides the 3 kings and a few real gods on the top of the 2nd level, theoretically, there shouldn't be anyone else who could withstand the attack in Sky Sword Prison. But this Jian Wushuang, a universe god, can withstand that attack. I wonder why his consciousness is that strong? Both Universe God Tianfeng and Universe God Gu Tong were fearful of Heartless King's strongest master stroke. Although both of their fighting powers could be compared favorably to real god on the 2nd level, they were universe gods after all. Their consciousness strength was merely on the level of a universe god's limit. If they were to run into Heartless King need not perform her strongest master stroke. They reckoned that any of her random consciousness attacks could kill them both. Heartless King and Blood Emperor both took action against him, but they couldn't do anything to Jian Wushuang. Naturally, no one could stop him from carrying out a massacre. Plus, Jian Wushuang was an accomplished universe god in terms of his consciousness probing ability. As long as he swept with his consciousness, no one could hide or conceal their aura under his watch. Hence, the experts under the command of both kings were terrified, and they left Darkness Mountain and Heartless Land to hide in the corners of Sky Sword Prison. We are all universe gods. Both of us are known as monstrous too. However, compared to Jian Wushuang, the difference is so vast. With his capabilities, it shouldn't be long until he reaches the criteria needed to leave Sky Sword Prison. Yeah, I'm jealous of him. Universe God Tianfeng and Universe God Gu Tong sighed emotionally as they were both envious of Jian Wushuang. Then, in Sky Sword Prison, there were people who secretly listed Jian Wushuang on the 1st level. In other words, he was on the same level as the 4 kings. But no one dared to call Jian Wushuang the 5th king. It was because everyone could tell that Jian Wushuang wouldn't stay in Sky Sword Prison for long. He had already killed the 7th real god by then, and he could totally continue to massacre and kill 10 real gods. It would definitely be very easy. Chapter 1481 Leaving. Chapter 1481, Leaving. In the dark red sky, cold wind was swirling. Swoosh, swoosh. 2 shadows, one in front and one behind, swept past the void. Real God Kong Ling, it is impossible for you to escape. Jian Wushuang's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He was staring at the shadow in front of him which was escaping, and he had already used the secret skill of dragon blood. Jian Wushuang, I am not one of the Blood Emperor's men, and I have never depended on the Heartless King. Moreover, I have never had any dealings with you before. Why must you be so ruthless? Real God Kong Ling's furious voice could be heard from the front. Ruthless? Jian Wushuang laughed coldly. Everyone, including you and I, have been thrown into the Sky Sword Prison involuntarily. I need to kill 10 real gods so that I can leave. As such, I'm sorry. As soon as his words left his mouth, the divine power that was already burning in a frenzy in Jian Wushuang's body intensified even further. With the 2nd stage of the secret skill of Dragon Skill, Jian Wushuang's speed increased by 100-fold immediately, and he caught up with real God Kong Ling instantly. Die. Jian Wushuang did not hesitate due to pity in the slightest bit, and he attacked straight away. After some time, real God Kong Ling, who belonged to the 3rd stage of real gods, was killed by Jian Wushuang. The 10th real god. Atop the void, Jian Wushuang looked down at real God Kong Ling's body with his eyes glowing brilliantly. From the time he had started his massacre in the Darkness Mountain up to the current moment, it had been 2 years. And finally he had killed the 10th real god. Initially, Jian Wushuang had planned to release his power against the Blood Emperor and the Heartless King. Hence, the 10 real gods who had died at his hand should have been experts under the 2 kings. However, it was a pity that the experts under the command of the 2 kings were not idiots. Since it was only him executing the massacre, The experts had already left the territory of the two kings and found themselves a hiding place in the Sky Sword prison. As such, Jian Wushuang had no choice but to kill those real gods who had never offended him. Buzz. Buzz. In the void, a peculiar power gathered all of a sudden. They have come. Jian Wushuang's eyes were glowing with delight. At the moment that the peculiar power gathered, all the experts in each and every corner of the whole Sky Sword prison felt it. Within the purple exquisite attic, Universe God Tianfeng and Universe God Gutong raised their heads. This power. Someone is about to leave the Sky Sword prison. If I'm not wrong, the person who is leaving is Jian Wushuang, right? Apart from him, the Sky Sword prison does not have anyone else who has fulfilled the conditions to leave. He left the Sky Sword prison after less than 5,000 years. I am envious of him. Within the Crimson Fortress in the Darkness Mountain. That little kid Jian Wushuang has finally left. The Blood Emperor clenched both his fists. However, his eyes were filled with mixed feelings. Initially, he had planned to kill Jian Wushuang and acquire the blood-killing plate armor. With this, he would have a chance to leave the Sky Sword prison. However, in the end, Jian Wushuang's speed of growth had completely stunned him. Hence, he had given up hope of acquiring the blood-killing plate armor a long time ago. When he saw Jian Wushuang leaving at that moment, he heaved a sigh of relief. The Fiery King sat within a sea of fire at the bottom of a lofty volcano in the fiery prison. At that moment he could not help but raise his head. This little kid has met the conditions. The Fiery King murmured and his face wore a smile. Fiery King, a message was delivered. Jian Wushuang, you're about to leave? The Fiery King questioned. Yes, Jian Wushuang chuckled. I am bidding my farewell to you before I leave. Thank you for taking care of me for the past few years. After I get out, I will definitely find a way to get you out. Don't think of trying to get me out. The chances are slim. You should continue training outside. For my lineage of Scarlet to have a junior like you, I can die without any regrets. The Fiery King laughed heartily. No matter what, I will do my best. After Jian Wushuang repeated himself, the peculiar power in front of him took the form of a giant hand and grabbed Jian Wushuang with lightning speed. Jian Wushuang had no way of defending himself against it and had also never even thought of defending himself against it. He was caught by the giant hand and sent into a wormhole that had opened temporarily. As the wormhole disappeared, the Sky Sword prison settled down quickly. Within a dim cave, the space opened up and with a glowing light, Jian Wushuang's body appeared in the cave. This place is... As soon as he appeared, Jian Wushuang's eyes surveyed the area. In no time, his attention was focused on a shadow sitting with its legs crossed in the area in front of him. He was a middle-aged man who carried 3 long swords and he looked like a unique, fierce sword. This middle-aged man caught Jian Wushuang's attention due to the cruel sword essence that he was releasing. This sword essence had caused even Jian Wushuang to be terrified. Suddenly, the middle-aged man opened his eyes. In a split second, a vast amount of sword essence burst forth and his cold eyes locked on to Jian Wushuang immediately. At that moment, Jian Wushuang only felt as if his neck had been strangled with great force by someone. He could neither speak nor breathe. This caused him to experience fear that he had never experienced before. The good thing was that this condition only lasted for a moment before it was undone. Jian Wushuang heaved a sigh of relief and he greeted the middle-aged man respectfully at once. I am Jian Wushuang. Greetings to the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain. What a frightening sword essence. Just a simple gaze was enough to deter Jian Wushuang from having any ideas of resisting him. This middle-aged man must be an almighty. This caused the identity of the middle-aged man in front of him to surface immediately. Little kid, how was your experience in the Sky Sword prison? The owner of the Sky Sword Mountain asked casually. Not bad, Jian Wushuang replied indifferently. Oh? The owner of the Sky Sword Mountain shot a glance at Jian Wushuang. That's right. You have been in the Sky Sword prison for more than 4,000 years. Moreover, you have also continued to improve yourself during the 4,000 years. Hence, you will not find it uninteresting. To you, this prison has become a good training place. After hearing what was said, Jian Wushuang laughed within himself. Most of the cultivators in the Sky Sword prison had been imprisoned for many years. During these years, their abilities had risen to their maximum a long time ago. Hence, there was not much hope for them to raise their abilities any further even if they wanted to. Moreover, they were unable to leave the prison. Naturally, this was a form of suffering to them. However, Jian Wushuang was completely different. In the past, you killed one of the white deacons in my Sky Sword Mountain. Moreover, you killed him within the Sky Sword Mountain, ignoring the rules of my Sky Sword Mountain. The voice of the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain turned cold. Jian Wushuang became stupefied. However, I have already imprisoned you in the Sky Sword Prison as it is a rule of the Sky Sword Mountain. Since you were able to leave the Sky Sword Prison by yourself, no matter what feuds you had with my Sky Sword Mountain in the past, all of them are written off. You can leave. Chapter 1482 Jian Wushuang's Request. Chapter 1482, Jian Wushuang's Request. When Jian Wushuang saw that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain had allowed himself to leave, he was delighted but he didn't move at all. Why, what's up? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain sounded cold. Jian Wushuang thought for a while and said politely, Senior, to be frank with you, I have 2 requests. I hope that Senior will agree. Haha. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain suddenly laughed. The laughter sounded casual but as it reverberated, the entire cave dwelling shook vigorously. Jian Wushuang was standing in the middle of the cave dwelling and his face went pale immediately. Luckily, he had already reached the first level of state of mind. Hence, he could continue to stand on his feet in the laughter. If it were to be any ordinary person, even a real god, as long as they wasn't on the first level of state of mind, they might have knelt on the ground. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stopped laughing and his face grew cold. Such a joke. I am willing to let you go and I'm nice enough to do so. You have the guts to request something from me? Jian Wushuang's face grew grave. His mind and soul were quivering madly under the huge pressure that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain imposed. However, he clenched his teeth and persisted. Humph, as you're a disciple of Star Palace, tell me about it. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain glanced at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang was delighted. He took a deep breath and started saying, The first thing is that I have an enemy over the years that I've spent in Sky Sword Prison. His name is Blood Emperor. Blood Emperor is one of the 4 kings in Sky Sword Prison. I've come across him twice and I'm definite that he's from Holocaust sect. Hence, I'd like to request that you, Senior, eliminate him. Holocaust sect? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain looked at Jian Wushuang and he looked shocked. He previously thought Jian Wushuang was stupid to ask for something at a crucial moment. But from how things were looking, Holocaust sect is the public enemy of countless cultivators in eternal chaotic world. Regardless of when, as soon as an expert of Holocaust sect is found, he must be exterminated immediately. However, are you sure that Blood Emperor is from Holocaust sect? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stared at Jian Wushuang. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded heavily. Alright then. Wait for a bit, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain said, and then he closed his eyes. Sky Sword Prison, Darkness Mountain, in the Crimson Castle. Blood Emperor was lying leisurely on a crimson bed. Now Jian Wushuang has left, my Darkness Mountain has finally resumed its tranquility, Blood Emperor muttered to himself. He had already sent a command to all the experts who had left Darkness Mountain to avoid Jian Wushuang previously, to return. After all, he was one of the overlords in Sky Sword Prison. If those experts who were an appendage to him weren't around, he wouldn't feel like an overlord at all. In Sky Sword Prison, in such a dull and fearless environment, his only happiness was derived from his feeling as an overlord. Suddenly, vroom vroom. A strange force condensed in the void above Crimson Castle. This force? What's going on? Could it be that someone is leaving Sky Sword Prison again? Blood Emperor was still in astonishment, but the void above substantiated into a towering hand and grabbed him at lightning speed. Blood Emperor had no strength to resist but was caught by the huge hand. At the same time, there was a terrifying, forceful strength that flushed into Blood Emperor's body and marched unhindered in his body. It's the owner of Sky Sword Mountain, Blood Emperor had fear spread across his face. Humph, it seems like what Jian Wushuang said was right. You're really from Holocaust sect. A cold voice traveled across the universe. At the same time, it rang in Blood Emperor's head. Blood Emperor stiffened in an instant. Jian Wushuang, it's Jian Wushuang. He met the owner of Sky Sword Mountain and told him about my identity. No. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain, please let me off. Please show mercy. Blood Emperor immediately roared and pleaded. You're a lackey from Holocaust sect and you want me to show mercy? Then the huge hand exerted strength and it was like pinching an ant to death. The hand crushed Blood Emperor's body into pieces. Blood Emperor's aura immediately dispersed too. After that, the huge hand gradually vanished into thin air too. The universe resumed its original state. However, in the shattered ruins of Crimson Castle, the lady in green who was appendage to Blood Emperor, felt an overwhelming billow in her heart. Blood Emperor is from Holocaust sect. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain found out about his identity and killed him? Jian Wushuang. Is it because of Jian Wushuang? In the dim cave dwelling, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain opened his eyes again. Jian Wushuang, you're right. Blood Emperor was really from Holocaust sect and I've exterminated him. As the owner of Sky Sword Mountain spoke, there was rage in his eyes. These people from Holocaust sect, they deserve to die. They lurk among various cultivators in eternal chaotic world. If they do not reveal some tricks from Holocaust sect, no one would be able to tell their identity. Even if it was me. You helped me this time. Otherwise, I wouldn't know that I had imprisoned an expert from Holocaust sect in Sky Sword Prison. Tell me, what's your second request? Jian Wushuang felt touched. He could clearly feel that the owner of Sky Sword Mountain was treating him slightly better than earlier. Maybe it was because he took a huge risk to request Blood Emperor's death. From the owner of Sky Sword Mountain's point of view, it wasn't a request but a helping hand from Jian Wushuang. Hence, he had a better feeling about Jian Wushuang. Another request is that I hope Senior can release one of the 4 kings, Fiery King, from Sky Sword Prison, Jian Wushuang said with extreme care. Fiery King? The owner of Sky Sword Mountain stole a glance at Jian Wushuang and smiled faintly. You and Fiery King are related? Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. He took good care of me when I was in Sky Sword Prison. Plus, he and I are from the same lineage originally. He could be considered as one of my seniors. I naturally want him to be released. Of course, if Senior were to have any request in return, I would try my best to fulfill it. Oh. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain immediately waved his hand. If it was an ordinary real god or universe god, I would allow it because you helped me unearth an expert from Holocaust sect earlier. However, Fiery King is one of the kings in Sky Sword Prison. He is quite useful to me, so please return. Senior, Jian Wushuang panicked. Return first. In the future, if my Sky Sword Mountain needs assistance from Lineage of Star, we can discuss it then, the owner of Sky Sword Mountain said and then closed his eyes. Hearing that, Jian Wushuang was convinced. He didn't bother the owner of Sky Sword Mountain further but bowed politely to him before he turned to leave. Chapter 1483 Receiving His Awards. Chapter 1483 Receiving His Awards. After the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain had left the cave, Jian Wushuang did not stay on and he left the Sky Sword Mountain straight away. I have finally left the Sky Sword Mountain. Jian Wushuang looked at the giant Sky Sword Mountain behind him and he felt reluctant. It should be known that he had been imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison for 4,400 years. During Jian Wushuang's training to date, this was the place that he had stayed for the longest period of time. I should send a message to Hall Master Yuan first. Jian Wushuang took out Hall Master Yuan's transmitting token. However, when he looked at the token, Jian Wushuang's expression turned strange. From his point of view, he was a disciple of the Star Palace. In order to fulfill the ultimate disciple task, he killed someone in the Sky Sword Mountain. Hence, he had broken the rules of the Sky Sword Mountain and was imprisoned in the Sky Sword Prison by the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain himself. Such a matter must have reached the ears of the Lineage of Star by now. Under normal circumstances, Hall Master Yuan would have shown himself and thought of ways to get Jian Wushuang out. However, even though a total of 4,000 years had passed, Jian Wushuang continued to remain in the Sky Sword Prison and, in the end, he had depended on his own abilities to get out. Moreover, when he met the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain previously, he did not mention anything about it. Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang sent a message and he got a reply promptly. Jian Wushuang, you got out of the Sky Sword Prison so quickly? Hall Master Yuan's voice was filled with a bit of surprise. Previously, I had thought that you would be able to get out within 50,000 years. Looking at it now, I was too conservative. In less than 5,000 years, you left the Sky Sword Prison with your own hard work. The Sky Sword Prison is extremely dangerous. My luck must have been good as well. Otherwise, I might not have a chance to send a message to you again, Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang said. It is obvious that you are trying to blame it on me. However, you must understand that the Sky Sword Mountain is not a small force. Moreover, you were imprisoned by the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain himself. In my lineage of star, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain might only be willing to give some face if the palace master showed himself. However, the palace master is always meditating in seclusion throughout the year. You know this, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. All right, since you have come out, return back here and meet me so that you can receive the additional rewards for completing the ultimate disciple task. After finishing speaking, Hall Master Yuan cut off the transmission. Jian Wushuang kept his token. However, his gaze was abnormal. Jian Wushuang, if my guess is not wrong, when Hall Master Yuan arranged the third part of your task, he had already guessed that you would be imprisoned in the Sky Sword prison. In other words, you could also say that he arranged for you to be imprisoned in the Sky Sword prison. The King of Venomous Worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's head. I have also thought of this point, Jian Wushuang smiled indifferently. In actual fact, when he was just imprisoned in the Sky Sword prison, he had already had suspicions. After all, back then when he was about to face Universe God Mo Yen, he had made ample preparations and the process had been executed perfectly. Although those real gods near Universe God Mo Yen did not realize it, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain, who was in a distant cave, had actually realized it and took action personally. For this to happen, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain must really possess remarkable powers. Even though he was meditating in seclusion, he still had everything that was going on in the Sky Sword Mountain in his eyes. However, there was another possibility. And that was that the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain had had his eyes on the Sky Sword Mountain for that period of time. More accurately, he had his eyes on Jian Wushuang. As long as I make a move, the owner of the Sky Sword Mountain will show up immediately and imprison me in the Sky Sword prison. Jian Wushuang shook his head and giggled. Of course, he knew that Hall Master Yuan had done this to train him and it was out of goodwill. Moreover, although he was imprisoned for over 4,000 years in the Sky Sword prison, in terms of abilities, he had improved greatly. Let's return to the lineage of Star. Jian Wushuang headed for the Purple Moon Sanctuary immediately. Within the dazzling galaxy of the Star Land in the Purple Moon Sanctuary. I have returned. Jian Wushuang appeared in the vast galaxy. As he looked at the neighboring galaxies, he could also faintly see a meta beast playing in the galaxy from the corners of his eyes. Hence he could not help but wear a smile. In no time Jian Wushuang returned to within the lineage of Star. As soon as he had returned, he went to see Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang, after not seeing you for over 4,000 years, your abilities must have risen considerably, right? Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang with a smile. About there, Jian Wushuang said. I also know a bit about the rules of the Sky Sword prison. Since you left the Sky Sword prison with your own abilities, you must have killed a sufficient number of experts. Tell me, how many experts have you killed? Are they universe gods or real gods? Hall Master Yuan questioned. I killed 10 real gods. Jian Wushuang did not hide the truth. Real gods. Hall Master Yuan's eyes brightened. Although the real gods in the Sky Sword prison have their divine power restricted to some extent, their bodies and unique skills did not weaken. For you to be able to kill 10 such real gods, haha, seems like you must possess the power to rank in the top 30 of the Universe God ranking list. Should be, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. In actual fact, Hall Master Yuan only knew that he had killed 10 real gods. However, he did not know that it was done in a very short period of time. Moreover, among the 10 real gods, some of them had already comprehended a small portion of the power of Heaven Wei and belonged to the second stage of real gods. In addition, Jian Wushuang's power might even be able to rival that of the 4 kings in the Sky Sword prison. For him to be able to do this much, Jian Wushuang's abilities could totally earn him a place in the top 20, or even higher, on the Universe God ranking list. Alright. There is no need for unnecessary words. Now, I shall give you the additional rewards for completing the ultimate disciple task. Hall Master Yuan became stern. Firstly, the additional reward for the first part of the task, 100 million Chaos Gems. For these 100 million Chaos Gems, due to the fact that you owe the Star Pavilion 47 million Chaos Gems, you will only receive 53 million Chaos Gems. Hall Master Yuan took out a Chen Kuan ring and handed it to Jian Wushuang. After Jian Wushuang received the ring, he swept his eyes past it normally and kept it after that. Although 53 million Chaos Gems was not a small sum, to Jian Wushuang just then it was not a lot. It should be known that within the Sky Sword prison he had killed 10 real gods. Among the 10 real gods, there were weak ones as well as strong ones. By killing the real gods, All their valuables and family keepsakes had fallen into his hands. By adding all of them up, the chaos gems that he possessed had already exceeded 1,000 million. For the second and third parts of the task, you have acquired the opportunity to enter the real God Hall. For the second part of the task, you are allowed to enter for a month. For the third part of the task, you are allowed to enter for 2 months. By adding them up, you are allowed to enter for a total of 3 months. I have already sent a message to inform the deacon who is in charge of guarding the real God Hall. You can go there directly, Hall Master Yuan said. Understood, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Lastly, there is another additional reward. Real God level Chaos Unique Treasure. Chapter 1484, Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor. Chapter 1484, Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor. Jian Wushuang beamed with joy. Real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure was extremely hard to come across, and it was an extremely valuable treasure. Even among real gods in Eternal Chaotic World, there was hardly any who owned real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure. For instance, when Jian Wushuang killed 10 real gods in Sky Sword Prison and retrieved their Qiankuan rings, there was only one real god who owned a real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure, and the real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure that the real god owned was a long spear. The long spear was a divine attack weapon. Jian Wushuang used a sword. Even if he received a real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure which was a spear, he could only look at it. But then he received a bonus reward from completing the Ultimate Disciple task in Lineage of Star. The bonus reward was aimed for him. The real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure was definitely something he could use. Jian Wushuang, first tell me which segment of real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure you'd like. Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang. This? Jian Wushuang thought for a while, then he lifted his head and answered, to me the most useful thing will be a real God-level Chaos Unique Treasure in Forming Realm. Forming Realm? Hall Master Yuan stunned. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded. He knew clearly how useful a realm treasure would be. In an evenly matched situation, a person with a realm treasure would definitely be at an advantage. Plus, even if one were in danger, he could use a realm treasure to suppress his enemy and make an escape easily. Hitting when one pleased and leaving when one wished. That was the biggest advantage of realm treasure. Jian Wushuang had always possessed a realm treasure, Blazing Quicksand Gourd. It was a pity that the stronger his power grew, the less useful the Blazing Quicksand realm would be to him. For instance, when he was in Sky Sword Prison, he gave his all to performing Blazing Quicksand realm, but it only had suppressing power to Universe God in the 3rd and 4th level to a certain extent. To Universe Gods who were stronger, the effect was rather unnoticeable. Hence, he naturally wanted to get another stronger realm treasure. However, after hearing Jian Wushuang's reply, Hall Master Yuan's expression grew strange. He said, Jian Wushuang, how dare you? Out of various kinds of treasure, realm treasure is no doubt the rarest and hardest treasure to come by. Comparing the real God-level Chaos Unique Treasures, a realm Chaos Unique Treasure could equal a few divine attack weapons. Jian Wushuang was speechless. Hall Master Yuan shook his head and continued, forget about real God-level realm Chaos Unique Treasure for now. I shall prepare 2 treasures and you can choose from them carefully. Then Hall Master Yuan waved. A green sword and crimson armor that gave out a strange aura appeared in the void before him. Jian Wushuang immediately looked at the 2 treasures. You should be able to see for yourself. The green sword is a divine attack weapon while the crimson armor is a defense treasure. Look, Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang picked the crimson armor. King of Venomous Worms' voice rang in Jian Wushuang's head. Of course, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. Hall Master Yuan, I picked the armor. You're quite smart, Hall Master Yuan smiled too. Among treasures of the same kind, although armor couldn't be compared to realm treasure, it is more valuable than a divine attack weapon. The crimson armor is named Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor, and I specially picked it for you. Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor? Jian Wushuang beamed with joy. The armor's name included the word reincarnation. Jian Wushuang, you should have comprehended reincarnation doctrine from the 4 supreme doctrines, right? Hall Master Yuan looked at Jian Wushuang with interest. Yes, Jian Wushuang nodded and admitted it straight away. That's it then. Not only is Blood Feather Reincarnation Armor great in defense power, it contains a secret skill that can enhance one's power. The secret skill requires the power of reincarnation to trigger it. The higher one's comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine is, the stronger the power triggered from the secret skill. However, relying on your current comprehension level, it should still be rather difficult to trigger the secret skill, Hall Master Yuan said. Jian Wushuang grabbed the blood feather reincarnation armor straight away. He touched the armor gently with his palm. Jian Wushuang could even faintly resonate with the armor. Then Jian Wushuang's smile grew even wider. Oh yeah, as you already have blood feather reincarnation armor. Please pass me the blood-killing plate armor, Hall Master Yuan looked over. Blood-killing plate armor? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. Blood-killing plate armor is Holocaust sect's treasure after all. Previously you were weaker in power and there was no better treasure. You had no choice but to use blood-killing plate armor, but now your power had increased tremendously and you have got yourself a stronger blood feather reincarnation armor. It's best to not keep blood-killing plate armor with you. The experts from Holocaust sect possess a certain sensory power to blood-killing plate armor after all. If you were to wander an eternal chaotic world with blood-killing plate armor with you, you might catch the attention of the people from Holocaust sect, Hall Master Yuan explained. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. In Sky Sword Prison, he had been under Blood Emperor's watch because of blood-killing plate armor. In Eternal Chaotic World there were definitely more hidden Holocaust sect experts. There definitely were experts stronger than Blood Emperor, but he had never come across one before. It was naturally best to pass blood-killing plate armor to Hall Master Yuan. Jian Wushuang removed the owner recognition on blood-killing plate armor, then passed it to Hall Master Yuan. This blood-killing plate armor saved my life countless times. Jian Wushuang sighed. Although he loathed to hand it over, he had no choice. Blood-killing plate armor was Holocaust sect's treasure after all. Very soon Jian Wushuang left Hall Master Yuan's and returned to Sword Star where he resided. He saw Qiu Yuan Sword Star and briefly asked about how the internal affairs and lineage of Star had been over the past 4,000 years. Then Jian Wushuang opted to cultivate in seclusion. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang sat down while the crimson blood feather reincarnation armor floated before him. Start owner recognition. There was a glimpse of light shimmering in Jian Wushuang's eyes and he started the owner recognition process. Blood feather reincarnation armor was a real god-level chaos unique treasure after all. It wasn't easy for it to recognize a new owner, but fortunately Jian Wushuang comprehended reincarnation doctrine and he was a person of quick comprehension. There wasn't any accident in the process of owner recognition. A month later, blood feather reincarnation armor turned into a crimson robe and was put on by Jian Wushuang. After owner recognition, Jian Wushuang started studying the secret skill in blood feather reincarnation armor. Jian Wushuang was surprised when he started to study it. Haha, Hall Master Yuan only knew I comprehended reincarnation doctrine, but he didn't know how much I comprehended reincarnation doctrine. Its beginner level requires one to possess comprehension level towards reincarnation doctrine that could pass through the first level of Doctrine Palace. And I happened to reach the prerequisites. Chapter 1485, Challenging the Star Tower Again. Chapter 1485, Challenging the Star Tower Again. The secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor indeed required a very high level of the reincarnation doctrine. Just the beginner level alone would require the power to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. However, Jian Wushuang had an extremely high level of comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine. During the 4,000 years in the Sky Sword Prison, he had been studying the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation intensively. As a result, he had completely understood the first 3 paintings of the painting of understanding sword via reincarnation. Hence, he possessed the power to clear the first level of the Doctrine Palace. In just a short while, Jian Wushuang managed to get the hang of the secret skill. Within the secret room, Jian Wushuang continued to sit with his legs crossed. However, he had already fully activated the secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor. Gosh, this power! Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly and felt the enormous amount of power in his hands. It was the full release of his divine power. However, after he had activated his blood and the secret skill of the reincarnation armor, his divine power increased greatly compared to the past. As of now, my divine power is unable to rival that of a real god. However, the distance between us is no longer as huge as before, Jian Wushuang sighed. The difference in divine power between a real god and universe god was extremely great. Previously, in the Sky Prison Tower, it was because of the fact that the real god's divine power was restricted that Jian Wushuang could kill them. If not for the restriction, he could only fight with the weakest of the real gods. However, at that very moment, with the secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor, the difference in divine power between him and the real gods had been reduced greatly. Not only does this blood feather reincarnation armor increase my defense greatly, it has also caused my abilities as a whole to skyrocket. Jian Wushuang chuckled and he was elated. After getting the hang of the secret skill, Jian Wushuang walked out of the secret room. Next he walked toward the Star Tower. The Star Tower was one of the 3 training grounds of the lineage of Star, and Jian Wushuang had only cleared its first level. Within the second level of the Star Tower, swoosh, Jian Wushuang summoned 9 shadows and unleashed his sword principles. He was extremely swift and fierce. The long-bearded, strict middle-aged man who fought with him also swung his long sword and clashed with Jian Wushuang's attacks continuously. However, it was obvious that Jian Wushuang's sword principles were faster and fiercer. Their power was also a lot greater. Go down. Jian Wushuang gave a shout and a sword light struck the body of the strict middle-aged man like lightning and caused him to retreat. The second level was cleared. As for the third level was a lot more difficult than the second level. By relying on his own sword principles and his close combat abilities, he was not the stern middle-aged man's opponent. In the end, Jian Wushuang had no choice but to use the reincarnation doctrine that he had learnt. By adding reincarnation power to the sword principles, their power rose sharply and he cleared the third level straight away. After clearing the third level, Jian Wushuang did not continue. Instead he left. I have already learnt 3 of the 4 secret skills of the lineage of Star. For these 3 secret skills, the secret skills of Star Palace could be learnt when one becomes a disciple of the Star Palace. As for Shenmue Golden Body, I only managed to learn it after I cleared the 19th level of the Illusionary Mind Sea. However, I am still unable to explain the origin of the secret skill of Dragon Blood. But now, I have cleared the 3rd level of the Star Tower. Hence, I am able to learn another secret skill. Thus, it is logical that I am able to learn the secret skill of Dragon Blood. As Jian Wushuang walked across the tall buildings alone, he wore an indifferent smile. Senior Wushuang. Greetings, Senior. During his walk, the disciples of the lineage of Star, who Jian Wushuang had met, all greeted him modestly. As for some of the disciples, they were talking in whispers. Senior Wushuang demonstrated his extraordinary skills in the previous battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, and he is almost on par with Ling Feibai. Later on, he went out to the outside world alone for training, and this journey alone was for over 4,000 years. It is only until when the next battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace is about to reopen again that he finally returned. Say, do you think Senior Wushuang will be able to retain his position as a disciple of the Star Palace in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace this time round? No idea. This is hard to say. If Senior Wushuang remains a universe god of the second heaven, then there will be no problem. However, at that moment, he and the equally famous Ling Feibai back then will have both become universe gods of the third heaven. The battle between the Star Palace disciples who were universe gods of the third heaven will be more intense. However, Senior Wushuang is extremely talented. Even if he were to be reduced to a normal disciple in the battle this time round, by waiting for another 5,000 years for the next battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, he would definitely be able to climb up the ranks. That is true. Jian Wushuang, a voice could be heard. Jian Wushuang stopped walking and turned his head. When he saw the person walking over, he wore a smile. Long time no see, Ling Feibai, Jian Wushuang laughed happily. It is because of the fact that you keep on immersing yourself in training in the outside world. The elegant and smart youth Ling Feibai came to the front of Jian Wushuang. Ling Feibai was one of the top geniuses of the lineage of Star. During the previous battle between the geniuses of the Star Palace disciples, at the universe god of the second heavens level, Ling Feibai could be said to be unrivaled. Even Jian Wushuang had lost to Ling Feibai in that battle. After over 4,000 years, Ling Feibai had already passed the god's test for the third heaven and become a universe god of the third heaven. Just a while more and the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace that occurs once every 5,000 years will begin again. Do you have confidence this time round? Ling Feibai looked toward Jian Wushuang. The battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace? Jian Wushuang was stunned. Back then, when he had first come to the Star Palace, he had paid close attention to the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. After all, if he were unable to keep himself within the top 5, he would be reduced to a normal disciple. In the lineage of Star, the difference in treatment between a normal disciple and a Star Palace disciple was extremely huge. However, at that moment, Jian Wushuang was no longer that interested in the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. Looking at the time, the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace is indeed about to begin soon. Jian Wushuang chuckled and spoke again immediately, I am quite confident. How about you? I have no confidence at all. Ling Feibai shook his head and forced a smile. Jian Wushuang, ever since you made a breakthrough to the universe god of the third heaven, you have been living in the outside world. Hence, you have never fought with the disciples who are universe gods of the third heaven before. As such, there are some things that you do not know. Give me an example. Jian Wushuang spoke with interest. Then I shall tell you. Within the universe god disciples of the 3 levels of the lineage of Star, the number of disciples who are universe gods of the third heaven is the greatest, Ling Feibai said. Oh. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and he understood quickly. All the disciples in the lineage of Star were real geniuses and a normal god's tests were unable to stop them. Hence, those disciples would usually not stay at the same level for long as they would be able to make a breakthrough. They would make a breakthrough from universe god of the first heaven to the second heaven, and then from the second heaven to the third heaven. However, after reaching universe god of the third heaven, Chapter 1486, Look for Someone. Chapter 1486, Look for Someone. There was a huge threshold between universe god in the third heaven and real god. Unlike leveling up to universe god in the second heaven from the first heaven. When the time came, it had happened when one passed the god's test. There were many universe gods in the third heaven and eternal chaotic world. Even in a smaller world, they could give birth to universe god in third heaven and more than one of them. However, real gods, compared to universe gods, there were much lesser real gods. Countless universe gods would stop at the level of universe gods in the third heaven for their entire life. Under such conditions, it was normal that the number of disciples of lineage of Star who were universe gods in the third heaven would be more than universe gods in the first and second heaven. Because there are too many disciples who are universe gods in the third heaven, the fight is the most vigorous, especially to fight for the quota as disciples of Star Palace, Ling Feibai explained. Then, among the disciples of lineage of Star who are universe gods in the third heaven, the top 2 are listed in universe god ranking list. Besides the 2 of them, the others who are close to having fighting power like one on the universe god ranking list, and even those who have fighting power like one on the universe god ranking list, are almost a dozen of them. The duration that I've been a universe god in the third heaven is too short. In terms of power, I might not be in the top 20 among the disciples. You mean when the fight for the quota as disciple of Star Palace starts, I might not be able to retain my position as a disciple of Star Palace? Jian Wushuang was quiet. Ling Feibai was a genius through and through. However, it was a short time since he had broken through and become a universe god in the third heaven. His power had yet to increase to its extreme limit. He still couldn't fight against the genius disciples who had been trapped at the level of universe god in the third heaven for many years. With your gifted talent, even if you became an ordinary disciple, when the next fight comes, you can easily take it back, no? Jian Wushuang smiled. That's true, Ling Feibai nodded with confidence. All right, I shall leave first. I have business to attend to. Ling Feibai left very quickly. Jian Wushuang continued to walk forward, but his facial expression grew strange. Battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. If Ling Feibai didn't remind me, I would have forgotten about it. However, with my current power, I might play the bully if I were to participate the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace. Jian Wushuang laughed from the bottom of his heart. 4,000 years ago, when he had first passed his inverse cultivation test in the second heaven and comprehended a slight bit of power of reincarnation, he had fought against an expert on universe god ranking list, Zhao Han. Back then his fighting power wasn't much weaker than Zhao Han's. Then, after he went through 4,000 years of training in Skysword Prison, his power had increased tremendously. Previously, Hall Master Yuan never once see him when he launched his full power. He merely heard about him killing 10 real gods in Skysword Prison and determined that he possessed the fighting power of the top 30 on Universe God ranking list. One should know that the 2 most outstanding people from the disciples who were Universe Gods in the third heaven, their ranking on Universe God ranking list was not in the top 40s. Hence, neither were Jian Wushuang's match. Hence, Jian Wushuang felt like a bully to participle the battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace with the other universe gods in the third heaven. The current me in lineage of star or even 10 cultivation sanctuaries already stands steadily on my feet. Plus, I have many resources to hand. I can go and do that now. Jian Wushuang's eyes gave out a gleam. Vientiane Tower, also known for covering all manifestations of the universe. Its force covered every single corner of 10 cultivation sanctuaries. In the secret room of Vientiane Tower on Star Land, Jian Wushuang sat in his crimson robe with a sword on his back. There was tea served before him too. I wonder what Vientiane Tower can do for you. A purple-haired elderly stood before Jian Wushuang with a smile. I want you, Vientiane Tower, to look for someone for me, Jian Wushuang said. Look for someone? The purple-haired elderly was surprised. I know Vientiane Tower does all kinds of deals. Looking for someone should be one of the deals, right? Jian Wushuang lifted his head to look at the purple-haired elderly. Of course. In Vientiane Tower, as long as you can afford to pay, there's nothing Vientiane Tower cannot do for you. The purple-haired elderly smiled faintly and then asked, I wonder what's the name of the person you're looking for and where is he from? Her name is Lung Rushue or maybe Lung Wushuang. She's a lady from Snow Kingdom, an ordinary eternal world. She only arrived in eternal chaotic world in the past recent 10,000 years, Jian Wushuang said. The level of her power? The purple-haired elderly asked. I don't know, Jian Wushuang shook his head. Maybe a universe god, also she may have broken through and became real god. You don't know the level of her power? The purple-haired elderly thought and continued to ask, do you know the person's other characteristics? And, she's an inborn sinner. Jian Wushuang said in a low voice. What? The purple-haired man's face changed and immediately creased his eyebrows. Why, is there a problem? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, a little, the purple-haired elderly nodded. You should know that inborn sinners represent calamity. The experts in eternal chaotic world deep-seated hatred against inborn sinners, not much better than Holocaust sect. Hence, as long as the inborn sinners aren't stupid, they will intentionally hide their identity and they will keep a low profile. They won't even use their name. Hence, it'll be rather difficult for us to look for them. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes slightly. He knew what the purple-haired elderly said was true. After Lung Rushue left Green Fire World, theoretically she should first depart to Dayu World. However, when Jian Wushuang was wandering in Dayu World, he once requested for the overlord of Dayu World, Dayu Palace and Scarlet Island to search for Lung Rushue's carefully. However, after the search there found no trace. Over the years he had been looking for ways to find Lung Rushue's whereabouts, but he had achieved nothing. He knew that it wasn't easy to look for Lung Rushue. Hence he had came to Vientiane Tower. In the entire eternal chaotic world, he reckoned that only Vientiane Tower had the ability to look for Lung Rushue for him. Vientiane Tower is also known to be formidable. No matter how well she has hidden, you should be able to find her. Jian Wushuang stared at the purple-haired elderly as he spoke. That's true, the purple-haired elderly smiled. However, to find a person who has tried all ways to hide her identity in the boundless eternal chaotic world and without the knowledge of the inborn sinner's power level, it is really not easy. Hence, the payment required is extremely expensive. How much? Jian Wushuang asked coldly. 1 billion chaos gems. Vientiane Tower can guarantee that we will find Lung Rushue's whereabouts in 10,000 years' time. The purple-haired elderly said with full confidence. 10,000 years? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. 10,000 years is a little too long. Chapter 1487, The Fight for Prestige. Chapter 1487, The Fight for Prestige. Jian Wushuang was not too concerned with 1,000 million chaos gems. What he was concerned about was time. After all, his wife had been completely suppressed by Lung Rushue. Moreover, it had been a very long time since Lung Rushue left the Green Fire World. In that period of time he had absolutely no idea how Lung Wushuang was doing. Did her circumstances become worse? Jian Wushuang was as anxious as a burning fire. Naturally, it was better for Lung Rushue to be found as early as possible. 10,000 years is already considered short, the purple-haired old man said. All of a sudden, his expression changed. By the way, do you have a picture of Lung Rushue or portrait-related items? I have her portrait, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. He would naturally have a portrait of his own wife. Even if he didn't, he could rely on his own memory and draw one on the spot. After receiving the portrait, the purple-haired old man swept his eyes past it. Afterward he revealed a smile. What a great beauty. In the whole eternal chaotic world there are not many people with such good looks. This makes it easier for us to find her. How about this? The cost will remain unchanged at 1,000 million chaos gems. My Vientiane Tower will do our best to give you an answer within 3,000 years. 3,000 years? Jian Wushuang's eyes squinted. No problem. This is the 300 million chaos gem deposit. When there is news, I will give you the remaining amount. All right. The purple-haired old man accepted the chaos gem heartily. Jian Wushuang left his own transmission token behind and left. Inside a pub, Jian Wushuang sat on a side desk and drank wine by himself. Shuanger. An extremely beautiful figure that could move people appeared in Jian Wushuang's mind. 3,000 years. No matter where you are, I will definitely find you. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly and his eyes glowed brilliantly. Lung Wushuang was his wife as well as the love of his life. Jian Wushuang, a message was sent over abruptly. Hall Master Yuan, Jian Wushuang replied immediately. Where are you? Are you within the lineage of Star? Hall Master Yuan questioned. Nope, but I am about to go back now, Jian Wushuang said. Don't return first, I need your help for a small matter, Hall Master Yuan said. Oh. Jian Wushuang revealed a surprised expression. This is what happened, Hall Master Yuan spoke. Within our starland there is a weak, small sect known as Green Lightning Sect. The Green Lightning Sect is under the charge of the lineage of Star. Not long ago, Green Lightning Sect and its opponent Seven Planet Sect agreed on a duel between their disciples. Naturally, this duel concerned the benefits the sects would get respectively. Hence, both sides had a tacit agreement to invite experts from the outside. Naturally, the Green Lightning Sect requested the aid of the lineage of Star at once. The lineage of Star had never declined before and we sent a Star Palace disciple over. Initially, with a Star Palace disciple who is a universe god of the third heaven, it would be easy to help the Green Lightning Sect win the duel. However, the Green Lightning Sect lost the duel. Oh. Jian Wushuang shuddered. All of the Star Palace disciples were geniuses among geniuses. A Star Palace disciple who was a universe god of the third heaven should have fighting capabilities nearing that of the universe gods on the universe god ranking list. However, the universe god of the third heaven had actually lost to a disciple of the Seven Planet Sect. Could it be that the Seven Planet Palace invited an expert from the universe god ranking list? Jian Wushuang questioned. It would be good if the Seven Planet Palace invited an expert from the universe god ranking list. After all the experts in the universe god ranking list were extremely famous and they would be recognized straight away. The lineage of Star and the Green Lightning Sect would be able to take precautions. However, the main point is that the person whom the Seven Planet Palace invited is a universe god that he has never been heard of before. His name is Ling Dan. Before this, Ling Dan did not have any reputation. However, he is extremely powerful, Hall Master Yuan said. When that duel began, one of the deacons was present. The deacon believed that although the universe god whom the Seven Planet Palace invited had no reputation, looking at his abilities, he could be ranked within the universe god ranking list. Moreover, he might be in the top 50 or even the top 40. Jian Wushuang became stupefied at once. Top 40 of the universe god ranking list. The two most outstanding Star Palace disciples of the lineage of Star were unable to rank in the top 40 of the universe god ranking list. The disciple of our lineage of Star was defeated in that duel. Moreover, the defeat was extremely tragic. Initially this was nothing. However, the key point was that during the duel between Ling Dan and the disciple of the Star Palace, Ling Dan used every possible means to humiliate the disciple. Moreover, he spoke of the Star Palace and lineage of Star many times. After that duel ended, he also mentioned that he would stay within the Seven Planet Palace for this period of time and wait for the lineage of Star to send an even more outstanding student to fight him. Moreover, this was said in front of many cultivators. What do you think he is trying to do? Hall Master Yuan questioned. That is very simple. He wishes to use our Star Palace disciples as a stepping stone and make a name for himself in the eternal chaotic world so that he can get into the universe god ranking list, Jian Wushuang replied. That's right, Hall Master Yuan laughed. He wishes to make a name for himself by using the Star Palace disciples as a whetstone. How can my lineage of star allow that? If he really gets his way with it, would our lineage of star still have face? Understood. You wish for me to go to the Green Lightning sect and defeat that Ling Dan head-on? Jian Wushuang giggled. That's right. Ling Dan's strength is very impressive. Among the Star Palace disciples, you should be the only one with the power to defeat him, Hall Master Yuan spoke. Moreover, letting you take action is not merely for the lineage of Star's face. It is also for yourself. You already have the fighting capabilities to be in the Universe God ranking list. However, within the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, you remained silent and unknown. This is the opportunity for you to prove yourself. I do not wish to prove myself. Being unknown to public might not be bad, Jian Wushuang said. If you were an expert by yourself, it would be fine even if you didn't have a reputation. However, you are a disciple of the lineage of Star. Since the lineage of Star has such a splendid disciple, how can we not let the people know about it? Hall Master Yuan said. At the end of the day, isn't it for prestige? Jian Wushuang said. Since you understand all is well. Stop with the unnecessary complaints, please go. After finished talking, Hall Master Yuan terminated the transmission. Jian Wushuang, do you feel that you have no choice? Although you are unwilling to make a reputation for yourself, the lineage of Star has forced you to do so. The King of Venomous Worm's voice, which was filled with interest, echoed in Jian Wushuang's head. Actually, this is very normal. To a sect, especially a great force like the lineage of Star, there is no longer any huge benefit to fight for. Hence, they can only fight for prestige. By having a very powerful disciple under them, it is beneficial to the lineage of Star in terms of recruiting other exceptional disciples or in terms of other areas. I know, Jian Wushuang nodded his head. As he knew the thought process of the highest administration of the lineage of Star such as Hall Master Yuan, he could understand. Since Hall Master Yuan has given an order personally, I shall make a trip to the Green Lightning sect. At the same time, I will fight for the lineage of Star's prestige. Jian Wushuang moved his body immediately. Chapter 1488 Jian Wushuang's Arrival. Chapter 1488, Jian Wushuang's Arrival. Green Lightning Sect in a lofty palace. There were two figures sitting together. One was an elegant man with long purple hair while the other was an old lady in black robe. Elder Chiu, is there any update from Hall Master Yuan? The elegant man with long purple hair asked. Yes, the old lady in black robe answered. Hall Master Yuan has already arranged for his disciple to come over. Do you know who the disciple is? The elegant man with long purple hair asked. No idea, the lady in black robe shook her head. However, with Ling Dan's ability among disciples of lineage of Star, there should only be the two strongest, Longya and Xian Yi, who are qualified to fight against him. Hall Master Yuan should have sent one of the two. I hope the one who came is Senior Longya. He's number 51 on Universe God ranking list. If he were to take action personally, he could definitely defeat Ling Dan, the elegant man with long purple hair said. The old lady in a black robe creased her eyebrows slightly when she heard that. She was the deacon elderly from lineage of Star. She watched the fight between the elegant man with long purple hair and Ling Dan clearly. She was the one who had determined that Xian Yi had the fighting power of one on the top 40 on Universe God ranking list. From his point of view, even if Longya were to fight Ling Dan, he would be out of the running. I wonder where did Ling Dan popped out of? I've never heard of him previously. However, he is so strong. The elegant man with long purple hair clenched his fists. He had fought with Ling Dan but he was heavily defeated. There are countless experts in eternal chaotic world and there are many geniuses that aren't famous but very strong. Ling Dan is just one of them. However, Ling Dan has the guts. How dare he use the disciple of Star Palace as his stepping stone? The old lady in a black robe had rage in her eyes. She really wanted to kill Ling Dan personally. Just you wait. When Hall Master Yuan was talking to me earlier, he sounded rather at ease. He should have a solution for this, the old lady in black robe said. In a few days' time. He's here. The old lady in a black robe and the elegant man with long purple hair who were waiting in the palace stood up simultaneously. They already sensed the existence of the disciple's token on the figure outside of Green Lightning sect. It is the disciple token of Disciple of Star Palace. It is definitely Senior Longya, the elegant man with long purple hair exclaimed in surprise. Let's go. Let's go and greet him, the old lady in black robe revealed a smile. The two of them immediately got up and came outside of Green Lightning Sect very soon. From afar, they saw a figure in a crimson robe who stood calmly in the void. Not Senior Longya? The elegant man with long purple hair creased his eyebrows. When the two of them got closer, they finally get to see the face of the figure in a crimson robe. Jian Wushuang. The elegant man with long purple hair couldn't help but gasp in surprise. It's him? The old lady in black robe was extremely shocked. They originally thought it would be the strongest among disciples of Star Palace, who was also the 51st on Universe God ranking list, Longya. Even if it wasn't, it should be Xian Yi, who was 82nd on Universe God ranking list. But in the end, it was one who had no fame at all in 10 cultivation sanctuaries, one who was never listed on Universe God ranking list, one who had broken through and become Universe God in the third heaven. It was Jian Wushuang. Swoosh. Swoosh. The old lady in a black robe and the elegant man with long purple hair appeared before Jian Wushuang. Elder Chiu, Senior Hu Feng, Jian Wushuang greeted them. He knew both of them. Jian Wushuang, Hall Master Yuan sent you? The old lady in a black robe, Elder Chiu asked. Yes, Jian Wushuang smiled as he nodded. Just you alone? Senior Longya or Senior Xianyi isn't here together? The elegant man with long purple hair, Hu Feng, asked in a deep voice. Just me alone, Jian Wushuang was still smiling. Hall Master Yuan is joking, right? Hu Feng's face grew grave. Ling Dan is so powerful and he could definitely be listed on Universe God ranking list. He might even be quite high up in Universe God ranking list. If I am not his match, you have no chance, Jian Wushuang. Since when did Hall Master Yuan not worry much about Lineage of Star's reputation? Senior Hu Feng, Jian Wushuang's face grew dim and unhappy. Hall Master Yuan is one of the 3 Hall Masters in Lineage of Star. How could he not bother about Lineage of Star's reputation? As he sent me, he naturally has his own intentions. What intentions? Could it be that you could really defeat Ling Dan? Forget about Ling Dan, I'm afraid you won't even stand a chance against me. Hu Feng stared at Jian Wushuang. How will you know if you don't try? Jian Wushuang stole a glance at Hu Feng. All right, Elder Chiu finally spoke. I believe in Hall Master Yuan. However, Ling Dan is really strong. From what I can see, he could be listed in the top 40 on Universe God ranking list. Jian Wushuang, are you really confident? Yeah, Jian Wushuang nodded. That's great. We'll look for Ling Dan now. How about that? Elder Chiu said. Okay, Jian Wushuang immediately agreed. Immediately, Elder Chiu brought Jian Wushuang towards where Ling Dan was. As for Hu Feng, although he didn't believe that Jian Wushuang could fight evenly with Ling Dan, he followed as well. Heavenly Fire Summit, where Green Lightning Sect fought against the disciple of 7 Planet Palace. After Ling Dan defeated Hu Feng, he stayed back at Heavenly Fire Summit and waited for the other disciples of Lineage of Star to come forth. When Jian Wushuang came near to Heavenly Fire Summit, his soul power instantly sensed the existence of countless cultivators' aura. The number of cultivators gathered around Heavenly Fire Summit just then was definitely more than 1 million people. Why are there so many people? Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. A bunch of people are here to enjoy the excitement. They came because Ling Dan intentionally spread news to attract them, Elder Chiu said. Because he attracted a large crowd, we of Lineage of Star didn't dare to flagrantly take action. Otherwise, Ling Dan would have died over and over again. However, he wouldn't be happy for too long. When this is solved, Lineage of Star will keep watch of him. We will kill him with our own hands once we get the chance to. Hearing that, Jian Wushuang complimented in silence. He could feel the murderous intentions of Elder Chiu. Merely to gain fame and be listed on Universe God ranking list, he could have challenged whichever experts on Universe God ranking list. Of all things, he decided to tease Lineage of Star and provoke us flagrantly. This Ling Dan is so irrational. Or maybe his provocation isn't simply just to gain fame? Jian Wushuang muttered. Who knows? Elder Chiu pouted. Regardless, let's go and meet him. With a smile on his face, Jian Wushuang's figure plunged towards Heavenly Fire Summit. Ling Dan. A low bellow was heard from Jian Wushuang and it reverberated through the universe. Chapter 1489 Ling Dan. Chapter 1489, Ling Dan. Inside a cave that had been opened temporarily in the Heavenly Fire Summit. Two shadows sat upright in front of a long narrow table. They were chatting and drinking wine. If nothing goes wrong, the disciple that the lineage of Star has sent should be arriving soon. A young man whose face emitted a slightly evil aura chuckled. This evil man was Ling Dan. Mr. Ling Dan, the lineage of Star contains countless geniuses. They even have 2 experts in the universe God ranking list. Are you sure that you can take them on? A bald-headed old man beside Ling Dan frowned. He was the master of the 7-planet sect. However, at that moment he felt restless. After all, Ling Dan stayed on purely because he was willing to do so, and it had nothing to do with the 7-planet palace. Even in that duel between the 7-planet palace and Green Lightning sect previously, it was Ling Dan who had invited himself in. He said that he would fight for the 7-planet palace and he would do so for no cost. At that moment, the 7-planet palace master felt extremely suspicious. However, when he thought about the benefits, he gave the green light. However, he had never thought that Ling Dan would actually provoke the lineage of Star after the duel. They were in the Star Land and the lineage of Star was the overlord. Who would be able to live a good life after offending the lineage of Star? However, things had already become as such. Even if the 7-planet palace master were to regret it, it was too late. The lineage of Star contains countless geniuses? Ling Dan laughed loudly. The lineage of Star contains many geniuses. However, in this generation, there isn't a genius who is very exceptional. Moreover, only 2 of them managed to make it into the Universe God ranking list. For the 2 of them, one of them ranked 51st on the Universe God ranking list while the other ranked 82nd. Hence, I do not think anything of them. In other words, among the disciples of the lineage of Star of the current moment, there is no one who can fight against me. That is what you think. However, that is the lineage of Star. Mr. Ling Dan, now you actually wish to use the lineage of Star as a stepping stone to build your reputation. This would offend the lineage of Star greatly, and after that, the 7-planet palace master did not manage to finish his speech. After that? We shall talk about what happens after that another time, Ling Dan grinned. On the surface, Ling Dan looked as if he did not care. However, he knew everything clearly from the bottom of his heart. According to that great person's agreement, as long as I can make the lineage of Star lose their prestige and use my own abilities to make it into the Universe God ranking list, he will agree to take me on as his disciple. Ling Dan's eyes were glowing brilliantly. He is an expert in the real God ranking list. Moreover, he is an extraordinary existence that is in the top 5 of the real God ranking list and is almost able to compete with an almighty. If I could be under the supervision of such an expert, how lucky would that be? Now, the opportunity is right in front of me. Even though there is some risk involved, how is it significant? The lineage of Star was one of the overloads of the Purple Moon Sanctuary. Hence, they were definitely one of the great forces in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries. However, the lineage of Star also had its own enemies. Among the enemies, one of them was a real god who was so frightening that he could get into the top 5 of the real god ranking list. Ling Dan had seen the real god before and even had an agreement with him. As such, he did not hesitate to spend a great amount of energy and use the duel between the disciples of 7-planet palace and the Green Lightning sect as an opportunity to provoke the lineage of Star. In other people's eyes, they thought of him as an idiot who aspired to be famous and only wished to use the Star Palace disciples of the lineage of Star as a stepping stone. Just look on, I will definitely get myself accepted by that great person. Ling Dan clenched his fists tightly and felt extremely eager. At that moment, Ling Dan. A shout resounded across the universe and naturally, it also traveled to the inside of the cave. They have come. Ling Dan stood up and he wore an icy cold smile. He moved his body at once and he appeared outside the cave. As for the 7-planet palace master, he was frowning. He then gave a sigh and followed after Ling Dan. The vast sky stood Jian Wushuang with a cold expression. At the same time, many cultivators had also appeared by the side of the Heavenly Fire Summit. The cultivators were all looking at Jian Wushuang and talking to one another. Who is this person? I have never seen him before. Looks like he is also a disciple of the lineage of Star. The people with the rights to challenge Ling Dan should only be Longya and Shen Yi, the 2 experts in the Universe God ranking list. However, this person in front of us is obviously not either of them. Amidst the talking voices, a fluttering light was shot onto the Heavenly Fire Summit. A loud, hearty laugh reverberated across the universe at the same time. Haha, they have finally come. I thought that the disciples of the lineage of Star were a bunch of cowards. It was obvious that this voice was filled with disdain. Ling Dan's body also appeared in the void and he was standing in front of Jian Wushuang. Oh? As Ling Dan looked at Jian Wushuang, he raised his eyebrow. I have seen the portraits of Longya and Xian Yi before. You are not them. Senior Longya and Xian Yi are busy with their work. Hence, do you think they have the time to fight with you? Jian Wushuang chuckled. Moreover, not just any average guy can pick a fight with the both of them randomly. Oh. Ling Dan's gaze turned cold and he laughed indifferently. You have a sharp tongue. Tell me, who are you? Jian Wushuang of the Star Palace. Jian Wushuang said magnanimously. Jian Wushuang? I've never heard of this name before. Ling Dan shook his head. However, since you are a Star Palace disciple, you should be capable. Go ahead and make your move. As you wish. Jian Wushuang raised the corners of his mouth slightly. His Blood Mountain sword had already appeared in his hands and remarkable sword essence rose slowly. Swish. As soon as Jian Wushuang moved his body, 9 shadows appeared at the same time. At the next moment he had already appeared beside Ling Dan. Yes, this speed and martial art motion are both not too bad. Ling Dan chuckled and he remained unconcerned. A large hammer could be seen appearing in his right hand and he swung it with a swing of his hand. Although the swing looked random, it contained an extremely shocking strength. In the places that the big hammer passed through, the air rumbled. Jian Wushuang's body stretched and became a huge bow. As for the Blood Mountain sword, it became an arrow and shot forward abruptly. Clang. With a loud sound, the quake caused by the collision of great strengths caused Ling Dan's body to shake and he could not help but retreat a step. Ling Dan raised his head with surprise. He then realized that Jian Wushuang had already turned his body around and a bright sword light appeared with a whistle. 10,000 shadows. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Countless sword lights appeared and headed toward Ling Dan. Every sword light was extremely fast and its power was shocking. Ling Dan's expression changed and he immediately swung his big hammer to block crazily. This resulted in heavy collision sounds one after another. At that moment, Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed. Go down. Swish. A scarlet sword light which looked like a crimson lightning in the sky was unleashed. Real God's unique skill. Crimson light. The crimson lightning pierced the big hammer and struck Ling Dan's body. Puff. Ling Dan spit out a huge mouthful of blood straight away and he retreated pathetically. Chapter 1490 Defeat. Chapter 1490 Defeat. The originally noisy voice suddenly turned deadly quiet. It was dead silent. There were more than 1 million cultivators spectating Heavenly Fire Summit. Every one of them was surprised at the sight. How could he? Wufeng stood there with his eyes wide opened. As for Ling Dan himself, he was dumbfounded too. 3 moves. From when Jian Wushuang had started taking action until then, he had only made 3 moves. In a short time, like the blink of an eye. Ling Dan spurted blood and retreated. What did it mean? Ling Dan, you lost. Jian Wushuang held his sword with one hand as he towered in the void and he looked at Ling Dan. Lost? What kind of joke is that? I was merely careless and you seized the opportunity. You think you're stronger than I am? That's a joke. Ling Dan's face was distorted in agony and his gaze towards Jian Wushuang was cold. As he bellowed, there was a terrifying aura that his body gave out. Jian Wushuang die. Ling Dan's figure turned illusionary as he took action again. This time, his action brought about a terrifying murderous intention, just like a furious beast with raging anger. Jian Wushuang's face grew cold as he saw the sight. Ling Dan was already defeated, but he didn't accept failure. He wanted to fight again. Humph. A cold harumph and Jian Wushuang took a step forward. The moment he took a step, Blood Mountain sword in his hand led an imposing sword intention and suddenly swung out. 9th Heaven Stroke. Hong. A boundless sword intention soared out of 9th Heaven and a huge, towering sword shadow suddenly appeared in the void out of nowhere. The sword shadow brought a long sword intention. Just like Nemesis sword, it struck at Ling Dan like lightning. At the same time, the secret skill from the Blood Feather Reincarnation armor that Jian Wushuang was wearing was triggered and Jian Wushuang's power was instantly pushed to a brand new, explosive level. Earlier, when Jian Wushuang had been fighting against Ling Dan, he didn't trigger the secret skill of Blood Feather Reincarnation armor. But then, bang. A low thud and in the instance, the surrounding void shattered into pieces from the force. A terrifying divine power storm swept out. From such divine power storm, a crimson figure that was covered in fresh blood suddenly plunged out. Everyone could see clearly that the explosion was from Ling Dan. Then, Ling Dan's aura was extremely weak and he was just like a dead dog when he was slammed back at Heavenly Fire Summit. Rumble. Heavenly Fire Summit was instantly pierced while Ling Dan fell under a ruin. He didn't move an inch and no one knew if he was dead or alive. In the middle of the battlefield, the divine power storm gradually dispersed and revealed Jian Wushuang's figure. Such an idiot. Jian Wushuang glared at the ruin where Ling Dan was as his anger soared to the air. It was deadly quiet in Heavenly Fire Summit. Dead silent. If they were to say that Jian Wushuang had severely injured Ling Dan 3 moves earlier, it might be Ling Dan who was careless. But then, merely with one stroke. Ling Dan had obviously gone all out. However, with one stroke no one knew if he was dead or alive. He was in an even more pathetic state than before. What was going on? The people on the scene were not fools. They could see clearly. One stroke and he defeated Ling Dan. This Jian Wushuang is so strong. The funniest part is that Ling Dan regarded himself as infallible. He said that he was careless but now he has been defeated by one stroke. Too strong. This Jian Wushuang is too strong. Countless exclamation was heard in the air. The millions of cultivators surrounding Heavenly Fire Summit were in unprecedented shock. Wufeng, who was not far behind Jian Wushuang, had his eyes wide opened. He couldn't believe the sight before him. While Elder Chiu, who was next to Wufeng, clenched her fists tight as her eyes beamed with joy. In the universe, everyone's focus was on Jian Wushuang. Right then Jian Wushuang's figure suddenly became illusionary. When he reappeared, he was already before 7-Planet Palace Master. 7-Planet Palace Master. A bright, loud voice was heard from Jian Wushuang and it reverberated through the entire void. 7-Planet Palace Master is definitely involved in this. So, fight. Jian Wushuang pointed at 7-Planet Palace Master with his sword. Suddenly the entire universe was in shock. This Jian Wushuang challenged 7-Planet Palace Master after he had defeated Ling Dan. 7-Planet Palace Master, he is a true real god expert. This Jian Wushuang he wants to challenge real god? Stunned. Everyone was stunned. 7-Planet Palace Master was stunned on the spot too. 7-Planet Palace Master stuttered and he then explained, Jian Wushuang, this is a misunderstanding. Our 7-Planet Palace never once thought of provoking Lineage of Star, nor do we have the guts or capability to do so. You save your bullshit to explain yourself to the higher-ups in Lineage of Star. Now you have 2 options before you. Either you give your all and defeat me or I'll kill you and exterminate 7-Planet Palace. You can make your own decision. Jian Wushuang sounded cold. On the way there, Jian Wushuang had thought clearly. He fought to save Lineage of Star's reputation. However, Hall Master Yuan also told him to display his power. As he had already decided to display his power, he might as well make a scene. So what if he defeated Ling Dan? His goal was 7-Planet Palace Master. He wanted to challenge a real god. Hearing what Jian Wushuang had said, the 7-Planet Palace Master's face grew grave. 7-Planet Palace Master, as you're not moving, I will not be courteous. Jian Wushuang said and his figure immediately turned illusionary. Wow. A sword shadow suddenly wreaked havoc next to 7-Planet Palace Master and slashed towards 7-Planet Palace Master's head. 7-Planet Palace Master's face changed and he moved backwards to dodge the sword light. Then Jian Wushuang dashed forward and lifted the tip of Blood Mountain sword in his hand. In the void before him there were 3 crimson snowflakes. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The 3 sword lights aimed in between 7-Planet Palace Master's eyebrows, throat and his heart at the same time. Every angle was extremely critical. 7-Planet Palace Master moved his body and made a narrow escape from the 3 sword lights. 7-Planet Palace Master, why aren't you moving? Jian Wushuang wielded his sword again as he roared. If you do not try your best to kill me, I will kill you without hesitation. You have no choice. Jian Wushuang's roar reverberated in 7-Planet Palace Master's ears and his face grew grave. Then there was madness that flashed through his eyes. Rumble. Boundless aura that only a real god expert could give out exploded from 7-Planet Palace Master's body. 7-Planet Palace Master finally wanted to fight back. Looking at the scene, Jian Wushuang's eyes brightened. Chapter 1491, Fighting a Real God. Chapter 1491, Fighting a Real God. A Real God. Jian Wushuang clenched both his fists tightly and his eyes glowed with excitement. He had fought with real gods before. Moreover, 10 of them had fallen by his hands. However, the real gods were those within the Sky Sword prison. Hence, their divine power was restricted to a great extent and they were unable to display the true abilities of a real god. But at that very moment, the 7-planet palace master in front of him was not under any restrictions. It would be the real fighting capabilities of a real god. Jian Wushuang also wished to experience exactly how strong a genuine real god was. Let's fight. With a shout, Jian Wushuang's figure changed magically and 9 shadows appeared immediately. The 9 shadows plunged across the void with amazing speed and appeared beside the 7-planet palace master. At the same time they also swung their swords. Crimson lightning came forth at once. Real god's unique skill, crimson light. The 7-planet palace master's eyes squinted slightly. A great amount of divine power moved about and became a thick layer of black light on his body. The black light was like black armor which covered the 7-planet palace master's body completely. At the same time, a black long gun appeared on the 7-planet palace master's hands. By cocking the gun and exerting strength upon it, the 7-planet master shot the black light directly. Boom. It was as if the universe around the area was affected by the black long gun and a giant, jaw-dropping black vortex appeared abruptly. The 7-planet palace master also used the unique skill of a real god. Moreover, he had also unleashed his full abilities. Go head-to-head. A head-on confrontation. Bam. The pitch-black long gun and the crimson lightning clashed and the space broke into pieces. The terrifying divine power then became shockwaves which swept past all areas in a frenzy. This was due to the head-on collision which generated reverse shockwaves and they headed toward Jian Wushuang and the 7-planet palace master at the same time. Jian Wushuang's body shook and he resisted the reverse shockwave easily. What? The 7-planet palace master's expression changed. At that moment he could not help but retreat a step. It was this retreated step that caused the power of the 7-planet palace master's long gun to be utterly defeated. He is merely a universe god. In a head-to-head battle with one another, he is actually stronger than me? The 7-planet palace master raised his head and looked at Jian Wushuang with shock. He did not know that Jian Wushuang was a universe god of the second heaven. However, due to his inverse cultivation, his divine power had already achieved the peak of a universe god of the third heaven. Moreover, he also possessed the Blood Feather Reincarnation armor. By activating the secret skill of the Blood Feather Reincarnation armor, the power that he had released was not very different from a normal real god. The most important thing was still his comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine. His comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine had already reached the stage where he could clear the first level of the doctrine palace. But what about the 7-planet palace master? He belonged to real gods of the lowest end and he had never comprehended even a small portion of power of the heaven way before. With the amplification by the reincarnation power, the full power that Jian Wushuang had released was a tad stronger than the 7-planet palace master. On the battlefield, Jian Wushuang grinned. His blood mountain sword followed along the pitch-black long gun of the 7-planet palace master. By slanting his sword slightly, he struck the 7-planet palace master's hands like lightning. The 7-planet palace master was so astonished that he shuddered. Although he wanted to retreat with a random stride of Jian Wushuang, he appeared in front of the 7-planet palace master. This martial art motion, the 7-planet palace master was astounded. Jian Wushuang had already launched his next attack. His body had changed into a sharp sword. His body served as the back of the sword whilst the Blood Mountain sword served as the edge of the sword. Whoosh! With a simple front pounce, the sword light came forth like the sharp claws of a ferocious beast. Clang! The 7-planet palace master swung his gun continuously to block with difficulty. However, Jian Wushuang turned his body nimbly and the long sword headed straight for the 7-planet palace master's head. Clang! 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 Intense sounds of collision resounded across the void. Jian Wushuang had either changed into a sharp sword or a ferocious beast. By combining his transformation with the secret skill Flowing Light Phantom, he displayed his ability to fight in close combat. It must be known that he had used a few thousand years to hone his close combat abilities in the Sky Sword prison. Moreover, he could still combine it with the flowing light phantom, a secret skill of the martial art motion. By using them together, could be said to be stunning. Too fast. His speed is too fast. His sword principles are also fast. One stroke after another, continuous and unending. This does not give me any opportunity at all. Moreover, his body is abnormal. A real god like me actually cannot find an opportunity to counterattack. The seven-planet palace master's face was filled with fright. He had already displayed the strongest abilities that he had as a real god. His divine power and unique skill, as well as his gun motion, had been unleashed thoroughly. In spite of that, he was still being pushed back by Jian Wushuang. Yes, he was being pushed back. Moreover, he was pushed back in all areas. The seven-planet palace master retreated continuously whilst being pushed back, and he was in an extremely difficult position, to the point that he did not have any chance to counterattack. On the sidelines of the Heavenly Fire Summit, millions of cultivators were looking at the fighting scene with awe. A universe god was fighting with a real god. However, the result was a one-sided match with the real god being pushed back. How is this possible? The seven-planet palace master was infuriated by Jian Wushuang's crazy suppression. With a furious howl, the black armor that the seven-planet palace master wore grew abruptly. In no time, it had transformed into a black giant exotic beast. The black exotic beast had 3 heads and it was extremely hideous. The seven-planet palace master's eyes turned completely back. The long gun in his hands was brimming with appalling power and he cocked the gun. Dark heavenly song. Boom. The whole universe turned completely black. Not even the slightest bit of light could be seen. The long gun that had been cocked abruptly became the only focal point of the universe. It was extraordinarily powerful and earth-shaking. Haha, bring it on. Jian Wushuang laughed loudly and an enormous amount of soul power erupted, forming a giant golden divine ape. As soon as the golden divine ape appeared, it roared fiercely. The giant long sword in its hands followed Jian Wushuang's movement and was swung abruptly at that very moment. Among the 3 real gods' unique skills that Jian Wushuang created, the skill with the greatest power. 9th Heaven Stroke. A nemesis sword which carried supreme sword essence descended again. The nemesis sword and the black long gun clashed. Boom. The universe shook. The minds of everyone by the sidelines of the battlefield could not help but ring with the terrifying sound. After the sound had disappeared. The seven-planet palace master gave a groan and some blood came out of the corners of his mouth. He retreated in an extremely sorry state. As for Jian Wushuang, although he had experienced an extremely strong shockwave, the shockwave was weakened by his blood feather reincarnation armor. By the time it reached his body, it was unable to affect him at all. He still stood firmly in the void and did not move. His aura remained tremendous and it did not look like it had weakened. The seven-planet palace master had lost the battle. Chapter 1492. His name is well known in the universe. Chapter 1492. His name is well known in the universe. Lost? Seven-planet palace master, a real god lost. More than 1 million cultivators at the scene were dumbfounded by the outcome. When Jian Wushuang defeated Ling Dan with 1 stroke, they were already astonished. But then Jian Wushuang had defeated a real god directly, a true real god. Top 20. Fighting power of a top 20 on Universe God ranking list. Definitely do. Only experts in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list have the power to fight against a real god face to face and be at an advantage and even defeat a real god. This Jian Wushuang turns out to be a super genius that is qualified to be listed in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list. He's a superb expert. Everyone at the scene, there was a commotion stirred in the bottom of their heart. Universe God ranking list was full of experts. However, to be listed in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list, every one of them were monstrous monsters. Such a monster they didn't normally get a chance to witness. But then, the cultivators on the spot saw him and witnessed the battle of a rising monstrous expert. They saw Jian Wushuang's thundering manner and how he had defeated Ling Dan with their own eyes. They also witnessed how he had defeated the real god expert, seven-planet palace master. They could only imagine Jian Wushuang's name would definitely be famous all across 10 cultivation sanctuaries and across the entire eternal chaotic world. In the void, Jian Wushuang stood coldly and Blood Mountain sword was sheathed in his scabbard. His gaze was cold as he glanced at Seven Planet Palace Master from afar and said, "Seven Planet Palace Master, this is a lesson for you. If there is a next time, you'll suffer Lineage of Star's true rage. The dignity of Lineage of Star definitely isn't something that anyone could provoke." Jian Wushuang's voice reverberated in the universe and didn't disperse until much later. Seven Planet Palace Master forcefully recovered the churning vital energy and blood in his body and stole a glance at Jian Wushuang. He heaved a sigh of relief. Although he had lost to Jian Wushuang before everyone and he had been discredited, the incident came to an end regardless. At least, Lineage of Star wouldn't find trouble with them in the future. Discrediting in exchange of Seven Planet Palace, in exchange for his life, Seven Planet Palace Master was grateful for Jian Wushuang. Seven Planet Palace Master immediately bowed politely before Jian Wushuang to show his respect. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly at his action and didn't bother with Seven Planet Palace Master, but walked towards Elder Qiu and Hu Feng. "Elder Qiu, it has been done. I shall return." Jian Wushuang stood before Elder Qiu. Elder Qiu nodded, his gaze full of admiration. Then Jian Wushuang immediately left without giving a second look to the surrounding spectators. At the end, Jian Wushuang took another look at Hu Feng. Hu Feng was still in amazement. Until Jian Wushuang had walked far away, he finally came back to reality. He said in surprise, "Elder Qiu, Jian Wushuang? No, Senior Jian Wushuang, how can he be that strong? Lineage of Star, one speaks with his power." They were both disciples of Star Palace. Jian Wushuang's power was obviously not something he could compare to favorably. He naturally had to refer him as Senior Jian Wushuang. "Strong? Why didn't you look up to him earlier then? You even commented that he wasn't your match." "What? Your attitude has changed entirely," Elder Qiu said playfully. "Elder Qiu, don't tease me. How should I know? Senior Jian Wushuang broke through and became Universe God in the third heaven not too long ago. Plus he isn't famous at all, but he is so strong. I reckon even Elder Qiu didn't expect it yourself, right?" Hu Feng said. Previously he had really held Jian Wushuang in contempt. However, he had his reasons. After all, Jian Wushuang really did have too short of a time for growth. Forget about him, among disciples who were universe gods in the third heaven in Lineage of Star, he reckoned not many would be bothered about Jian Wushuang's power. "That's true," Elder Qiu nodded. She admitted that although she believed in Hall Master Yuan's arrangement, she was in doubt of Jian Wushuang's power. Until then she had only understood when Jian Wushuang revealed his true power. "Oh yeah, how's Ling Dan? Is he dead?" Elder Qiu looked down into the ruin that Heavenly Fire Summit had become. Ling Dan was still in the ruin, not knowing if he was alive or dead. Humph, he had the guts to provoke Lineage of Star, who cares if he's alive or dead? Hu Feng smirked coldly, but Senior Jian Wushuang is really amazing. He defeated Hu Feng with one stroke and defeated a real god head-on, a true real god. If not mistaken, with Senior Jian Wushuang's power, he is already qualified to be listed in the top 20 on Universe God ranking list. Elder Qiu smiled and replied, "On Universe God ranking list, only geniuses in the top 20 are capable of defeating a real god." When Jian Wushuang was fighting against Seven Planet Palace Master earlier, he was on the winning side the whole time. With such power he definitely can be listed in the top 20. Vientiane Tower should receive the news very soon. Then they'll amend the ranking on Universe God ranking list. This young man will also be well known in the universe. Fame was based on absolutely compelling battle achievements. Just like 4,000 years ago in the Boundless Void, when Jian Wushuang had met Zhao Han and they had had a vigorous fight. Not many people saw the fight and the fight was too close to call. Those who watched the battle couldn't determine if Zhao Han had used all his power too. Hence, even if the news travel, no one could determine if Jian Wushuang possessed the fighting power of one on Universe God ranking list. Let alone putting Jian Wushuang on Universe God ranking list after the battle. That was why Jian Wushuang still wasn't famous after the battle. However, it was different then. Then there were a million cultivators. Before a million pairs of eyes, Jian Wushuang defeated Ling Dan with one stroke, and he was also on a winning streak and had defeated Seven Planet Palace Master, who was a real god. Everyone approved of Jian Wushuang's battle achievements and his power naturally could be determined. Just as Elder Qiu had said, on the day Jian Wushuang defeated Seven Planet Palace Master, Vientiane Tower received the news and there were even images of the battle. Vientiane Tower covered all manifestations of the universe. It held an extremely special position in 10 cultivation sanctuaries. The Universe God Ranking List and Real God Ranking List were created by Vientiane Tower. Then, after they had obtained the image of Jian Wushuang in the battle, the higher-ups in Vientiane Tower watched carefully and determined that Jian Wushuang really did possess the fighting power of one in the top 20 on Universe God Ranking List. Hence, very soon, a brand new Universe God Ranking List appeared. The brand new Universe God Ranking List listed Jian Wushuang as the 20th member. Along with the announcement of the brand new Universe God Ranking List, Jian Wushuang's name spread across every single corner of 10 cultivation sanctuaries. Jian Wushuang became truly well known in the universe because of this. Chapter 1493, Number 20 of the Universe God Ranking List. Chapter 1493, Number 20 of the Universe God Ranking List. Inside a cave created by special gems in the lineage of Star, Hall Master Yuan and the 10 deacons of the lineage of Star had gathered together. Everyone, this is the most updated Universe God Ranking List by the Vientiane Tower. Please take a look. Hall Master Yuan smiled and passed down a ranking list. The deacons looked through the ranking list. After some time, they focused their attention on the name in the 20th position of the Universe God Ranking List. Jian Wushuang is ranked 20 on the Universe God Ranking List. Jian Wushuang? That little kid in our lineage of Star? Number 20, how can this be? After the deacons had seen the rankings, none of them were able to remain calm. Jian Wushuang. During the previous battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace, we saw him display his outstanding talent among the disciples who were universe gods of the second heaven. After he made a breakthrough and became a universe god of the third heaven later on, we thought that he would still need a period of time before he could get into the Universe God Ranking List. But now, in less than 5,000 years, he got into the Universe God Ranking List. Moreover, he got into the 20th place straight away. According to our information, Jian Wushuang defeated the 7-Planet Palace Master. We know that although the 7-Planet Palace Master belonged to the lowest end of the real gods, he was still a genuine real god. Haha, top 20 of the Universe God Ranking List. How long has it been since a genius disciple who could get into the top 20 of the Universe God Ranking List appeared in the lineage of Star? The previous appearance of such a disciple was 3 million years ago. When Elder Wu was still a universe god, he got into the top 20 of the Universe God Ranking List before. I remember that Elder Wu was ranked 19th back then, one rank above Jian Wushuang now. That Elder Wu remained universe god of the third heaven for a total of 300,000 years. Moreover, it was only because of him obtaining many opportunities and treasures that he got into the 19th position of the Universe God Ranking List. However, how long has it been since Jian Wushuang made a breakthrough to the Universe God of the third heaven? Comparing talent, it is obvious that he is more talented than Elder Wu. This little kid has an unimaginable future. Many deacons were gasping with admiration and the whole cave was filled with delighted laughter and cheerful voices. As for Hall Master Yuan, who was the leader, he was also over the moon. Previously, he knew that Jian Wushuang had killed 10 real gods in the Sky Sword prison and thought that Jian Wushuang had fighting capabilities to get into the top 30 of the Universe God Ranking List. However, looking at it then, Jian Wushuang was obviously stronger than he had thought. It is rare for such a genius to appear in the lineage of Star. This is great news. However, keep in mind that we must always protect Jian Wushuang. After all, although the 10 cultivation sanctuaries at moment look peaceful, they have actually been doing something behind the scenes. The lineage of Star also has some dangerous enemies. Hence, there is no guarantee that they will not lay their hands on the geniuses of our lineage of Star, and naturally Jian Wushuang will be the first to be affected, Hall Master Yuan warned. Naturally. All the deacons present nodded their heads in succession. The lineage of Star had always paid great attention to their disciples, especially the most outstanding Star Palace disciples. Hence, there should be no problem in terms of protection. By the way, Jian Wushuang himself might not even know the news about him making into the 20th position of the Universe God Ranking List. Let me send him a message. Hall Master Yuan chuckled and sent this piece of news to Jian Wushuang, who had just returned to the lineage of Star. Inside a secret room in the Sword Star, the complete list of the Universe God Ranking List was floating in front of Jian Wushuang. In particular, he was looking at his own introduction. Jian Wushuang. In the Heavenly Sky Summit, he defeated Ling Dan, who was ranked 39th on the Universe God Ranking List, with one stroke. Afterwards he had an intense battle with the Seven-Planet Palace Master, a real god expert. He pushed back the Seven-Planet Palace Master throughout the whole battle and finally defeated him in the end. Such powerful abilities have allowed him to get into the top 20 of the Universe God ranking list. However, as he has never fought with the other top 20 experts, he will be ranked in the 20th position in the Universe God ranking list temporarily. Ranked 20th temporarily? Jian Wushuang felt strange. Jian Wushuang, with the abilities that you displayed, you should be able to get into the 16th or 17th position of Universe God ranking list. However, you have never fought with an expert in the 16th and 17th position. In addition, the Vientiane Tower has always been conservative when it comes to the ranking of the Universe God ranking list. Hence, they only placed you at the 20th position. After all, if they had placed you in the 16th or 17th place based on your fighting results, they would be unable to get the trust of everyone. However, by placing you at the 20th position, no one will say anything. As for the temporary part, the Vientiane Tower probably hope that you will come across experts that are of a higher rank, and after going through a fight, they will raise your ranking. The King of Venomous Worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's head. I see, Jian Wushuang understood. Back then when he had fought with the Seven-Planet Palace Master, he had more or less used his full power. Although he still had trump cards remaining, there were not many of them. If he had shown all his trump cards, there might be a chance that his fighting capabilities would bring him into the top 15 of the Universe God ranking list. However, top 15 was his limit. He still lacked the power to get into the top 10. According to the information on the Universe God ranking list, the top 10 experts of the list have accomplished the feat of killing a real god. Jian Wushuang clicked his tongue. He had also killed real gods. However, the real gods that he had killed were those whose divine power was restricted and they were unable to display their full prowess. Hence it was different. As for the real gods that the experts in the top 10 of the Universe God ranking list had killed, all of them were able to release their power to its full extent. However, they were still killed in the end. Therefore, it could be seen how frightening the 10 people in the top 10 of the Universe God ranking list were. The Universe God ranking list had also named them the 10 monsters. Compared to the 10 monsters in the top 10 of the Universe God ranking list, I am still quite a distance away right now. Moreover, I am merely a Universe God of the second heaven. There is still room for my abilities to rise, Jian Wushuang laughed. He was extremely confident in his own abilities. The Jian Wushuang of the very moment was under the restriction of being a Universe God of the second heaven. Hence, his unique skills could no longer be improved. Otherwise, he might be able to compete with the 10 monsters. Moreover, as soon as he got past the third heaven's inverse cultivation test and become a real Universe God of the third heaven, he would be able to go against the 10 monsters easily. My journey is still long. Let me continue to train, Jian Wushuang giggled and put the Universe God ranking list away. As for that Ling Dan. Previously, after taking one stroke of Jian Wushuang's, he was seriously wounded. However, he did not die. Due to the fact that he had fought a few times previously, the audience took note of him. The experts of the Vientiane Tower also felt that Ling Dan had the fighting capabilities to get into the top 40s of the Universe God ranking list. Hence, he was ranked 39th. For the next period of time, be it the lineage of Star or the movements in the outside world as a result of getting news about Jian Wushuang did not bother about them. He stayed on the Sword Star to meditate in seclusion so that he could train. In the blink of an eye, another 400 years passed. The battle to become a disciple of the Star Palace in the lineage of Star had arrived. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.